Welcome to our Board of County Commissioners meeting for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026. First up, any adjustments to the agenda, Mr.
No.
Wodorowski? Next up, any emergency business?
No.
Okay, thank you. Next, we will have public comments. Speakers will be taken in the order in which they sign up and will be limited to 3 minutes for comment. The time will start when you come up to the dais and state your name, please. First up, we have Dale Tronrud. Was that close? It should be live.
Oh, okay.
Yep, you're good.
Hello, my name is Dale Tronrud, and I live in Springfield. I'd like to encourage you to spend some time in introspection on the county's goals when lobbying the BLM on their plan to massively increase logging on the ONC lands of Oregon. You are members of the Association of ONC Counties and apparently allow them to advocate for changes to the BLM forest plans, management plan on your behalf. My understanding from Eugene Springfield Lookout articles is that your representative to the association has recommended that you not publicly discuss what you would like the association's stance to be for fear of undercutting their bargaining position, and you have agreed. I also understand that you cannot discuss such matters in private due to open meeting laws. When and how can the voters of Lane County be heard if we cannot learn your individual positions on the Trump administration's order and encourage you to either modify them or stand pat? How can you collectively, as the board, advocate for changes in the ONC County's position if you cannot even discuss the matter among yourselves or have a public vote? If none of the members of the board can state their opinion as to what stance the ONC County should adopt, who is making the decisions at that association? The taxpayers of Lane County are paying the county's membership fee in this association. Surely they must have a say in what policies it advocates. I've looked over the website for the Association of ONC Counties and find no mention of this defining issue of the management of ONC timberlands. They do state that the current level of production on these BLM lands is a bit less than half of what they believe is reasonable. The order from the Trump administration is to quadruple production. Does this mean that the association is going to fight the administration? Do you want to double again the logging rate that you were asking for last year? Most people in Lane County are unaware that any of this is going on. The association's plan will be a massive swing toward increased production. You should remember that the current forest plan was designed as a compromise between those Oregonians who wanted more production and those who wanted less. What do you think the county's finances will look like after the pendulum inevitably responds by swinging back further than where it is now? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Linda Kelly.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Linda Kelly, and I live here in Eugene. I'll be brief. I'm here to testify on the problem that we're having with Sanapak. As you know, Sanapak, one of our refuse haulers, is not a local company, as most people believe. Unlike Apex and Royal Refuse, who have been locally owned since at least the 1970s, Sanapak is owned by Waste Collections, Inc., a $9.8 billion enterprise from Texas who is buying up small landfills in Oregon. They want to create a corporate monopoly. Corporate monopolies, as we have seen time and time again, do not benefit the customers, but solely are designed to increase company profits. Sanapak is robbing Springfield citizens and the county of the tipping fees that support our recycling, composting, and hazardous waste programs. These benefit all of us. This creates a dangerous trajectory in the county and state. While not paying tipping fees, their rates are actually higher in Springfield than in Eugene. The pollution caused by driving their trucks to their landfill in Medford at 2 to 3 miles a gallon is wasteful and very polluting. I ask you to request the Springfield City Council to create a legal agreement with Sanapak that requires them to use Short Mountain landfill and to pay the tipping fees if they continue to act as a hauler in Lane County. Thank you for your time and work.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Gary Rose.
My name is Gary Rose. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I met with the planners over in the planning department. I went in on a Thursday. I spoke with the planner and I got the application for a manufactured home replacement. I came back on a Monday to submit for a permit and was informed I needed more forms filled out. I was informed by the planner that it was not their responsibility to tell me what I needed. It was my duty to bring all necessary documents when I come in. I said, this is a problem I see and I hear from others all the time. We come in for information, we talk to the planner, we get instructions, we come back with the application, and we're pretty much starting all over again with more requirements. I left, and I then made an appointment on the website for an appointment in Florence. They come down every 2 weeks now. I had a 9:30 appointment. When I showed up for my appointment, I said, I have a 9:30 appointment. I was asked, are you Gary Rose? I said, yes. They then told me, we do not have you on the schedule at all today, and maybe we can work you in sometime today. It was the way they said it. It wasn't, we'll try and work you in. It was just very contingent. I met with Dan Hurley, and I made an appointment with Keir Miller to discuss this. As always, I was met with, glad to hear from you. We're always interested in your comments. I have met with him several times and staff offering to meet with builders, contractors, staff, get together and see if we could come up with a process that flows better. And it's always kind of the same thing. We're doing an internal audit or we're working on it. Thank you for your comments. During the recessions, planning tried to help, and things were moving along rather smoothly. As long as their jobs were on the line, they were pretty helpful. And being on the Planning Commission for 8 years and missing nearly only 4 meetings, I told staff things were running a lot smoother, and I was grateful for that. After the meeting with Dan Hurley, I went back to the planning department. They told me they had been given bad information just days before we had talked. They had done some research and discovered the incorrect info. Then I went to permitting. They were very helpful. They give me more forms to fill out. I said, is this it? Yes, it is it. As soon as we get your geotech report, we'll process your permit. I get back to my office the next morning. I have 3 more forms to fill out. So my question to you folks here today is, who's running the show over there? Why can't we come in, meet with the planner, get all necessary forms, and move on?
Your time is up. Thank you for your public comment.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, we have Anna.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Anna. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm an organizer with Trans Alliance of Lane County. Today's Transgender Day of Visibility, which started in 2009 and has been ongoing since then as a different kind of day to Trans Day of Remembrance, which is in the fall and early winter. This is a day of visibility. This is a day of where we're supposed to celebrate people who are trans, who live in this country and have made that decision to come out and be a member of this community as their authentic selves. I always have friends ask me as a joke, do you feel very visible today? And I always say, yes, I very much do. But today I feel visible in a very different way, because this morning the Supreme Court ruled in an 8-to-1 travesty decision that conversion therapy is actually protected free speech and not regulated medical practice. There was one sole dissent. It is a great dissent, and I recommend you read it. This reminds us of the many attacks on trans individuals as well as gender diverse intersex individuals that are happening across this country now. A year ago, Trans Alliance of Lane County, along with other groups across the county, organized to have hundreds of people pack this room to demand that the county make a promise to immigrants and transgender individuals that there would be sanctuary here in this county from the incoming attacks by the conservative regime. I ask you, just as I ask Steve and Rob, are you doing enough? When your children, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, and your family look back on your legacy as a public servant, will they find that you have done enough? There are two specific issues in Lane County I'm talking about today. I was torn on coming today. I am not, generally speaking, philosophically aligned with asking public officials to do things for the people. As we saw in Twin Cities, Minnesota, the people are more than capable of taking care of themselves. And yet, this commission and our public officials at the table to my right find themselves in a position to influence public policy in ways that would be quicker than how the people could do it. The first is a transition on the job policy. Why does the sheriff's office still not have this policy? Why do other agencies within the county still not have this policy as a matter of course? Why does APM not have this updated yet? The second is the Lane County Jail's policy on housing transgender inmates. A few years ago, there was a transgender woman who was housed in a male dorm for 9 months. She had her cell banged upon by male inmates. They catcalled her. They gave slurs to her. When she told deputies what was happening, they initially dismissed her concerns. When people have written the sheriff's office asking for redress, the sheriff's office says that we consider these on a case-by-case basis. And that case-by-case basis leads to people being housed in single cells in torturous conditions. Fix these conditions. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Chris Wagner. Wave. Three minutes will start when you state your name.
Morning, Chris Wagner, Cottage Grove. I'm here today to give my thanks to all the garbage haulers that have chosen not to haul to Short Mountain. I see them as trying to protect their customers, to keep pressure or reduce pressure on rates. Most customers of these garbage haulers are people on fixed incomes or maybe struggling to make it. So kudos to these garbage haulers that have flagged out of the Short Mountain increases. I'd also like to point out that thanks to these haulers, hundreds, thousands of tons of garbage are being diverted to other sites, and that is prolonging the life of the Short Mountain landfill. I think you should all be thanking them for doing that. That was the whole genesis of all this IMRF stuff in the beginning. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, and I'm going to pre-apologize, we have Blake Zully. Zalezi. I tried, sorry, Blake.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Blake Zalezi. I want to start by saying thank you to Commissioner Lovall. He was doing some community work yesterday that led to a serendipitous interaction, and then subsequently, a beautiful team that I work with is here on behalf of Riverview Crisis Response. I see all of these plaques in front of me here, and I believe that all of you are very concerned and caring about this community, and our crisis response is community-wide. It's been around almost 3 decades, and it will be ending at the end of June, at the end of April. So a little less than a month now, and when we were talking to Commissioner Lovall yesterday, it didn't seem like he was too aware of that, and so we wanted to bring awareness to all of you here. It's pretty sad to see because our program has not only been for crisis response. Personally, I do mobile dispatch as well, or I do mobile response as well as dispatch for answering the phone. It's 24/7, 365. We have day teams and evening teams. But what we also had was an intensive stabilization unit that would come in and get referrals from the emergency department or our crisis response. And so a lot of the barriers of service in this community and in this country are wait times, right? Our lists and trying to get services, and a lot of the families really need that. Our program, due to the funding source, was able to come in and provide wrap services for these families pretty immediately. Sometimes we would have crisis responses on the weekend. We'd come in and meet on a Monday, and by Tuesday, we would have behavior supports, therapists, and peer supports, which you're going to hear from all of these. That's beautiful, and the only way we could do that is through a funding source like a grant or private funding sources, which is not something that I can speak on. The county, in my understanding, has decided to non-renew that contract, that grant contract that allowed us to operate through Riverview. I'm not going to speak on any reasons as to why or how, but what I will speak to is our community should be proud of the service that this program has provided, and as a template for how mental health services for youth should be provided on a national level. And it's been incredibly grassroots. It has been incredibly impactful, and it is incredibly disheartening to see it come to an end. And even in the gracious perspective, to see the county pick that up and have to create something new, and we had something that was so useful and so valuable. I know my team here will speak further on that. But as a lifelong resident of Lane County, I want you all to be aware of what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Tiffany Long.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Tiffany Long. I am here to talk about a program that has been a part of this community for over 2.5 decades, and one that has personally changed my life. What makes my perspective unique about this program is that I have been on both sides of the door. Years ago, this crisis team responded to my own home during some very difficult times. They brought support, de-escalation, and a sense of stability when it was needed the most. They showed up without judgment. They helped my family navigate moments that felt very overwhelming. And for the past 5 years, I've had the privilege to be on the other side of the door, serving the families in our community in some of their very hardest days. Just last night, I sat with a young man who was struggling deeply with school, with friendships, with family relationships. He had the courage to call our crisis line all on his own. He reached out for help in a moment, and I was able to help validate his big feelings, help him regulate, and work with him to create a plan to be safe for the rest of the evening. This family currently has no ongoing services, and without programs like ours, they will be left to navigate this process alone. But with proper support, we could connect them with intensive intervention services, with therapy, with behavioral support, with family support, until we could get them into longer-term care. That kind of support is life-changing for our youth. This work is not only valuable, it is essential, and it keeps people safe. It strengthens families, it reduces the strain on our emergency services, and it meets people where they are in the moment that they very much need it. I love this work. I have seen firsthand the difference it makes, not just as a provider, but as someone who has once needed the same help. I respectfully urge you to speak with the county about signing an MOU to ensure that there is no lapse in these services we could continue to give. Even a short gap would mean that someone in crisis would have nowhere to turn. The crisis work matters. It saves lives, it builds hope, and it reminds people that they are not alone. And if someone in this county reaches out for services on May 1st, the question will be very simple. Will there be someone to answer the phone, and will they respond? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Laura Kempf.
Hi, my name is Laura, and I'm a crisis response worker at Riverview Center for Growth here in Lane County. Every day, I work with youth and families who are navigating some of the hardest moments of their lives. A lot of the time, these families are already doing everything they can with very limited resources. And even with the supports that do exist, it can still feel like there's not enough. So the idea of losing another resource is honestly heartbreaking. Because I've been in those homes, I've sat with those parents who feel overwhelmed and don't know what to do next. I've been with kids who are hurting, dysregulated, and just need someone to understand what they're going through. And something I've learned in this work is that crisis doesn't always look the same. Sometimes it's loud, sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's a family at their breaking point, even if it doesn't meet a definition on paper. But for the people living it, it's real. And all we can do is show up for them. Not to define their experience, but to support them through it. Because in those moments, sometimes the most powerful thing we can offer isn't anything complicated. It's presence. It's being another human in the room who can slow things down, who can listen without judgment, who can help everyone take a breath. I've watched situations shift just because someone showed up with care instead of escalation. I've seen families go from feeling completely alone to feeling supported, even just for that moment. And that moment matters, because for a lot of families we serve, that moment can be the difference between things getting worse or starting to stabilize. This work matters because these people matter. And the need in our community is real, and it's growing. If anything, now is the time we should be showing up more, not less. Now is the time we should be standing beside our community. Now is the time we need to meet people where they are and remind them they're not alone. My hope is that we can continue to find a way to keep showing up for these families, and I support the request for Lane County to sign the MOU to continue this work, because the need isn't going anywhere. Because when people are in crisis, they don't need fewer doors to turn to. They need someone to show up. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Julia Williamson. Julie.
Thank you for hearing us. I'm the director of the Riverview Crisis Response Program, and this is the very devoted team, or some of them. We have about 25 people. Over the last year, our team has responded to 2,659 calls from families. 54% of those calls were de-escalated just over the phone with caring individuals. 46% required a mobile crisis team to go out. The impact on the community is that this reduced 911 calls and law enforcement involvement, meaning that, our local police and rural police have to spend less time going out to homes to manage children's behavior and can actually do the job that they're assigned to do. We have reduced the emergency department visits for these children, where they used to be housed for weeks in the emergency department waiting for some sort of services. We've increased family stability. There are families who have lost their jobs, faced eviction, had criminal charges against them for the outbursts and the behaviors of their children. Lane County has decided after 2.5 decades that they do not want to renew this contract, citing budget cuts. However, the calls that we go on, they will only cover about 27% of those calls, and the other 70% will go unanswered because they don't meet their criteria for a crisis. That's a lot of children out there and a lot of families who will call the Lane County Crisis Line and will get turned away. We have spent the last 6 months asking the county to renegotiate with us. We've offered to do it with a smaller budget. We've offered to compromise, to work in partnership with them, and they have simply been unwilling to do that. All we have asked them now, at the recommendation of the Oregon Health Authority, is that they sign an MOU just giving us permission to continue to operate on those calls that they won't respond to. It will cost the county nothing. It's literally just permission for us to continue doing what we're already doing. So I guess we urge you, we cover all of Lane County, every city, every rural area. Our teams go far and wide, all hours of the day and night. They work their day jobs, and they choose to do this in the evening to help the community. Losing this service is going to be a great loss to the community and is going to put a lot of strain back on law enforcement and emergency departments. So this is work that is very valuable and meaningful to us. And next you'll hear from a couple families who have received our services, and they can speak to how it's impacted them. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Megan Murphy.
Hello, I'm Megan Murphy. I am a foster parent. Now we're called resource parents. I've been doing this for 12 years. And over the past 4 years, I've been working with kids in hotels. And we do temp lodging prevention because we don't want kids in that environment. It's much better to be in a home. The kids that end up in hotels are usually off the streets. They have poor mental health and just a lot of addictions and behaviors that make it hard for them to go into a more typical foster home. I've lost 2 of the teens in my care have passed away over the past couple of years, which is so sad. In June, I got a call saying, I've got these teens, they're siblings, they want to be together. We heard you have 2 open rooms. I said, okay, I want to meet them first. We met, and along with them was Riverview staff. They had behavior support people there. We worked it out. We said, okay, we'll do a trial. Got the kids in there. The Riverview, the difference with these 2 kids was the Riverview team. I didn't know anything about Riverview, but the way that they worked with these kids, they had behavior support team, they had a crisis team, they had therapists. My kids wouldn't go to therapy. The therapist said, all right, we'll come to you. Just everything about this team, we met weekly. They helped us with finding jobs for one of the teens, with school enrollment, with purchasing clothes, with just so many things. And that's the difference with these 2 and the success I've seen. So now Riverview's sort of trying to figure out what's happening. Well, my kids are falling apart. The boy's not going to school. The girl doesn't have her job anymore. And really, it's just we haven't had what we were having because I guess they're just trying to figure it all out. Their BSSs, their behavior support specialists have left. One of their therapists have left, and I see the difference. And it's sad because what we got from Riverview as a team to support, I can't do it alone. These kids have addiction. They have all kinds of big behaviors. They have nothing else. And so Riverview would come in. I'd say, this is happening. They're like, are you saying it's a crisis? Yes, it's a crisis. We'll be right there. And now it's almost April, and they've been with me this long. They've been home every single night, met their curfew, and I really attribute it to the team. And so it's just been such a huge difference, and I really hope that it can continue. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment. Next up, we have Melanie Campbell.
Hi. You heard what this team does. You heard their beautiful and eloquent descriptions of what they do. But I want to ask you, have you ever believed you would die at the hands of your child? I have. And I use that word believe because it was not a maybe. It was going to happen without them. I'm sorry for my emotional state, but this is huge to us. If you pull the 911 calls from our house, you'll hear the terror in our voices. The knowledge that without the police, we were in serious peril from our son. This was a multiple call per week, sometimes more than once a day call for help. 3 calls into our months-long crisis, a police officer gave us Riverview's phone number. My husband had to call less than an hour after the police left our home that day. And Riverview came. And then later that day, they came again. That's when I met a sassy angel named Tiffany. She has the ability to bring the tension in a room down notches instantly. She asked about Blake's care and identified a lack of services I didn't even know we lacked. I didn't know what was out there. Everybody tells you a different story, asks you to fill out different applications, and meanwhile, you sink. You constantly sink. Tiffany taught me to stop asking the wrong questions, get the right applications. even working on submissions with me. She brought a team behaviorist in that connected with Blake, helped, not this Blake, helped start seeing himself as a real person again, gave him his humanity back. Some days we called Riverview more than once a day. They came in person, talked Blake down on the phone. No matter when we needed them, they were there in a real and impactful way. We have not had to call 911 recently. Our last call was in January, and it wasn't once a week. It was one phone call. That's led to 2 months of no calls. That means we have help, and we're not a drain on our community in the same way. What Riverview Crisis Team does, what they really did for us, they walked in like highly trained, experienced warriors in team shirts and no fear. They guided us to a lasting solution. Our son has a DSP. He's doing well. He's even gotten to take a trip with his DSP. With certainty, I would not be standing here today without the skillful intervention of these people. How many other families need this group? Their very unique program should not be dismantled. There is no way disabled kids win in this scenario. Their families do not win. Not in a world without Riverview. Please make a choice to save lives. This is not me being melodramatic. This is not an emotional sentiment, even though you hear my voice. This is a cold, hard fact. Taking their funding away was the stupidest decision any politician ever did. Please reconsider, sign anything you need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up and last in Harris Hall today is Keith Andrews.
Good morning. My name is Keith Andrus. I'm spent the last 25 years as a general contractor in Roseburg, Oregon, Douglas County. I've recently had some dealings with Lane County Land Management, and I just felt like it was something that I needed to bring to someone's attention, that it seems like the process is getting more and more difficult. I have a situation where I was in need of a placement permit for a manufactured home. I'm not building anything. I'm just seeking a permit to place a manufactured home on a lot that we purchased a couple of years ago. And I could go through a lot of things, but basically, I've been told things that were going to happen that don't happen. There's no follow through. So far, there's been about 8 people involved in this process, and unfortunately, they don't speak to each other. I had one situation where I walked into the main lobby, spoke to the person at the reception desk, and I asked to speak to, I asked a question about Lori Parker, because it seems as though this whole thing that's been going on for 3 months revolves around a facilities permit, and Lori is the person that issues the facility permits. Well, I've dealt with her in the past. She's a very nice lady, very helpful. I asked the person at the front desk, is Lori coming in today? She said, I don't know. Lori comes in at different times. Sometimes she doesn't come in at all. And then I asked another question about a process, and she said, I don't know. We don't communicate with Lori. Well, you know, this person's desk is here, and Lori's desk is here. And without Lori, you don't get a building permit. So I can't understand why they aren't speaking to each other, and they put notes in the computer, but we can't view her notes and she can't view our notes. And anyway, it's just a process that's been ongoing for the last 3 months, and it's the simplest thing that you could probably do. Placement permit for a manufactured home.
Thank you for your public comment. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody that showed up today. Next up, we have our consent calendar for.
Chair, may I interrupt?
Oh, Jessica, do we have anybody online? Thank you for the reminder.
For those joining online, if you would like to give public comment, please raise your virtual hand now. I don't see any hands raised. I'll return it to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate it. Next up, we have our consent calendar for March 31st, 2026. All items listed here are considered to be routine by the Board of Commissioners and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion or of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent calendar and will be considered separately. Vice Chair.
I will move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, March 31st, 2026.
Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a motion made by Vice Chair to approve the consent calendar from March 31st, 2026, and seconded by Commissioner Lovell. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, next up, I believe, is our Health and Human Services. I see coming to the table.
Good morning. I will turn it over to Zach Evans, our Assistant Director of Finance and Administration, to present the item. I'm just here for questions.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. We have the second round of lottery bond funding for your approval today for the Lane Stabilization Center. It's $14.5 million, and we have, upon issuance, which is scheduled for May 18th, 2026, 36 months to finish or fund the project with these dollars.
Okay, well, we're happy to answer any questions. I think the only other point is that it is only a couple of times a year that bonds can be funded. So, delay at this point could delay the project due to the funding available to us today.
Got it. Any questions? Mr. Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions. Zach, you went through it kind of quickly. You said 36 months to fund the project. Is that what I heard this last comment?
Sorry, we have 36, after issuance, we have 36 months to spend the funds.
To spend the funds. Okay, well, that answers a lot of my questions that I was going to have. One of the questions was, do these funds have a time restriction? And now you're telling me they do. So the question that I have is just some of the pending litigation that's still kind of in the air. Do you see that as a concern that we as a board need to have, that we may be getting to the end? And I also see that you've got a monthly distribution of those funds scheduled through 27. And I'm wondering if that's going to have any disruption to that at all that you see coming forward.
I think this goes back to the conversations that we've had with the board around, there are a lot of parallel processes happening with the Stabilization Center project. Generally, when we're making decisions to move forward on any point, there is a level of risk. And there's also a level of risk in delaying the project further. So ultimately, it is the board's decision-making on, do we want to tie up one thing before we move to the next, which could put this project out many, many years, or do we want to take that risk for the parallel work streams happening? And, I'm happy to answer any questions to help inform you all in making that decision.
Got one more, Chair, if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much. I do notice that these funds are also distributed by reimbursement. So it's not like we're going to request the funds unless we have a cost incurred. So with that comment, Director Gray, you just said that if parallel things happen and it gets shifted around, and Zach's saying that we only have 36 months to use these funds, is there a concern with the board of going forward, of putting money forward that we then get reimbursed for, that we may possibly, after the end of 36 months, if complications are unforeseen, that we have a situation where we're reimbursing the state for what we've already spent? Is that a concern?
I think we would have to look and get back to you. I am not aware that that's a concern unless you are, Zach, because we would be expending the funds on approved purposes. But we can certainly go back and look at the agreement and return with a more formal response.
Yeah, thank you. That would, I found those questions I had on page 5, 12, and 18 of the agreement. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Willing to entertain a motion?
Okay. I'll move approval of Order 26-03-31-10 as presented.
We have a second, and we have a motion presented by Vice Chair to approve Order 2603-31-10 in the matter of accepting state of lottery bond proceeds in the amount of $14,500,000 from the Oregon Department of Administrative Services and delegating authority to the county administrator, their designee, or their subdelegate to sign all documents necessary to receive funding. And it was seconded by Commissioner Trieger. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify with an eye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Next up, and County Administrator is already at the seat. Okay, looking at item 6A. Which will be Eric Mongan.
Yes, Eric's coming up for this.
Yep. To discuss a very exciting land banking.
Yes, thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Very excited to be here before you today to present a draft order that includes a really remarkable list of interested Lane County residents in the effort to develop a land banking program here at the county. This effort began about a year ago. Actually, a year ago tomorrow, I presented to you all in a work session about different options to implement the Affordable Housing Action Plan. And one of those options was, of course, land banking. And so with your direction, came before you that following May. And it was ordered that the county administrator create a 7-member task force to help guide that process of developing the program. Through circumstances as they come and go, we were able to get that recruitment process going in January of this year. We utilized the county social media, issued press releases, completed interviews with local media, and I was pretty amazed. Remarkably, we received 36 amazing applications from Florence to far east Springfield. Just a really nice representation of the county with a lot of really well thought out, letters of interest. And so because of that, we started to consider that maybe we should increase the size of the task force that was created by that order in 2025 from 7 members to 13 members. This was seen as a way to ensure that we're capturing as much of that positive sort of wanting to participate interest in the land banking program. And so at the time that I contacted each of you to discuss the interested parties in your district, discussing, this could be a potential to increase. So with that, I took the initiative, if you will, to draft in an order that's included with the packet that would increase the task force to 13 members. And just so you know, I have reached out to all of the identified individuals that are appointed from each of, or tentatively appointed from each of your districts, and everyone is still on board and ready to participate, even going as far as giving me known dates of, vacations and things like that, so we can really hit the ground running. Just a brief summary of those individuals' experience and/or profession. We have a land use professional, housing development and construction, legal and regulatory work, human services, community support, contract support, public administration and procurement, business and organizational leadership, and science and education. Really just, I think we're in an amazing position to have a really robust process that will finish with a presentation to the county administrator of the draft report and draft language for the lane manual update to include the task or the land banking program sometime in late August or early September, I hope, with a presentation to the board by the end of the year for hopeful adoption and implementation of that program. Staff does recommend that you adopt the order as presented with the 13-member structure, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Questions? Commissioner Farr.
A bit of a statement, not really a question. I first became involved in our local land banking program in 1995 when I became a Eugene City Councilor. And clearly, as you know, and you and I have discussed, Eric, City of Eugene's had a tremendous success in land banking and providing up to close to 1,000 front doors, 1,000 new residences since the time I got on the Eugene City Council, a few weeks before that, a few years before that. But the first thing I did as a councilor was I toured the City of Eugene's land bank sites with Richie Weinman and Abe Farkas. And we identified places throughout the city that were just empty lots, and some places remote from other empty lots. And through those years, I've watched those empty lots become affordable housing for so many families. So many lives are affected by the land banking of the City of Eugene. They've received national awards. And I think that our land banking program is closely mirroring what they do in terms of land acquisition and in terms of determining who is the developer who is benefits from the land. What it does ultimately is that it reduces the amount of leverage that people have to acquire. Their debt service is reduced significantly, so the front doors can be provided at lower cost to the developer. Homes for Good's been a recipient. Bascom Village, one of the more recent ones, was Homes for Good and St. Vincent de Paul, a tremendous City of Eugene land banking program that turned out. I believe there are maybe 56 total units at Bascom Village. If you go out there, it just is a wonderful family neighborhood. So I'm all in favor of this. It's one of the coolest things I've ever been involved with in Eugene since I first became elected. And it's, Eric, thanks for the work on this. Thanks for getting together this incredible 13-member team that we have. And looking forward to the work and looking forward to years from now looking in my rearview mirror and saying, look at all that stuff that came from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions? Commissioner Lovell.
Yeah, just more of a comment too, Eric. With that smirk on your face, I can tell you're really proud of your team. So you should be, because all your hard work paid off and you attracted a really good team. So I'm excited about what's going to happen in the future. And I'm, along with Commissioner Farr, anything we can do to help make your job easier and make that team more powerful, I'm on board. So thank you.
Commissioner Trigger.
Thank you. Well, I'll just add, I think it's testament to how ready this community is to start looking at more creative, thoughtful, long-range ways that the public organizations and governments can partner with private developers in support of getting more front doors built, particularly at a rate that is affordable for the developer, which ultimately makes it affordable for the person to live in the unit, whether it's to purchase or to rent. But the sheer number of applications and the level of aptness of their backgrounds is, I've never seen anything like it in all of the different committees and task forces that we've put out. We always garner some very talented and skilled people with the right kinds of, knowledge base and content matter expertise, whether it's lived experience or professionally. But this was exceptional from looking through at least the the dozen or so that came from my district, and it was a great problem to have. It was really hard to choose. So anybody that didn't get selected that's out there, I'm sure we will have other ways for you to plug in, because this is clearly work that's really ripe and ready for community engagement and for us to get involved in. So I'm excited not only about what this task force will produce, but then the relationships we build with those community members and how they can engage in other work that the county's doing moving forward. So thank you for putting a great proposal out there that garners such interest. It's really, really great to see. Thanks.
Do I have a quick comment if you're good? Yeah. So I spent a good portion of yesterday in meetings in Florence, and at the very end of the day, the Central Oregon Coast Realtor Group asked if I could meet with them, and we went and met. And one of the things that came up was these problem land plots they have that are, I mean, just beautiful views or whatever, but there's just no way to develop them. And they started talking about this process, and I thought they knew about our land banking program the way they were talking about it. And so I said, well, we have this land banking program that we're starting up. And I mean, it was amazing that the excitement that came across them. So, I mean, if you come across, or if you're looking for properties or a group to talk to, they are completely on board and very excited about this. So it's cool to see that kind of relationship, because that was one of the concerns when we started this, is this isn't us versus you, this is us working with you. And you've just done a fantastic job of getting that message across. Oh, I mean, they hadn't heard about it, but the messaging that you've given us to give to them is working well. So appreciate it. I'm very excited. This is going to be great. Very, very excited. Yes, Vice Chair.
I concur with all my colleagues, of course. I think we're all pretty excited, and I do appreciate the fact of increasing it, because only 7 members, a couple people might not be able to make a particular meeting, and then that's a really small group. So I think 13's perfect, and if somebody can't make it, you still got plenty of people to keep the process moving forward. I'm excited about the timeline, because, they're going to be working apparently over the summer, basically, and then getting back to us in a pretty timely manner. So I'm excited to hear back the progress. I'm assuming you'll come to us with at least one progress report in the meantime over the summertime, and then the final plan that we can implement and get going. So thank you for the work. And with that, I will make a motion to approve Order 26-03-31-11 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made.
I'll third.
We have a motion made by Vice Chair to approve the action order 26-03-31-11 in the matter of appointing members to the Land Banking Program Development Task Force, seconded by Commissioner Lovell and Commissioner Farr. Any discussion?
Just one last thing I'll add, Chair, and Commissioner Buck and I both serve on the Homes for Good Board of Directors, and I've been on that since 2013. Our most recent opening was Ollie Court, which is 81 units, a former Naval Reserve site over in West Eugene, northwest, south. Well, it's Jefferson West Side neighborhood. We opened that 81 site facility last year. 81 units. It's already fully occupied, and that is a former City of Eugene Land Bank site. That's one of the more recent ones that we have helped to develop.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it. Okay, next up, item 6B, discussion and action order 26-03-31-12. Mr. Holmes at the table. There he is. Sneaky.
Well, good morning, Chair, Commissioners. So we're here today it actually includes, we're going to combine 6B and 6C. And so we're going to present present them together. The first one, item 6B, which is the board order 26-03-31-12. It's accepting the Lane County's annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025, and ordering the corrective action to be filed with the Secretary of State. And so that's why we pulled it off the consent agenda to talk about that. And the reason why we're here today is item 6C is to report, have the auditors report on the presentation of the audit of the local option tax levy that supports the jail beds, youth services, as well as the park levy fund and service operating report. And so there's attachments to this report, but here we do this in a public forum to ensure full transparency of the county's financial reporting and the oversight of these voter-approved programs. And so joining me today are the county's independent auditors, and they're joining remotely, is Amanda Moore and Kevin Mullerly from Baker Tilly. And they're going to walk us through the results of the annual comprehensive financial report, the corrective action plan, and the audit findings, and also the levy-supported programs. And so, Chair, with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenters.
Thanks, Greg. I can kick us off. Maybe we'll just start with an introduction really quick, and then we can jump into our audit results. I'm Amanda Moore. I'm a principal with Baker Tilly. Kevin, do you want to do?
Yeah, and I'm Kevin Mullerly. I am a director with Baker Tilly and excited to go over these results with you today.
So we have concluded our audit over the fiscal year 25 financial statement audit, as well as the compliance audits. And as a result of our audits, we do issue 4 audit reports. So I will go over what's in those and the results of those reports. The first report is over the county's ACFR, so your annual comprehensive financial report, and whether or not that report is presented materially correct in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles. So we're auditing those to make sure that there are no material errors when conforming to those accounting standards. So the first report we issue is over those, and we issued a clean or unmodified opinion. So that means that we were, based on all of the audit work that we completed, we were able to get comfortable that financial document is materially correct in accordance with those standards. The second report is related to the governmental auditing standards, because you do also require to have a federal award audit and are an Oregon municipality. We do audit your financial statements under the generally accepted governmental auditing standards, which requires that we issue a report over internal controls. Now, this report is not an opinion over the effectiveness of your internal controls, but based on our audit procedures, if we identify an internal control deficiency that rises to the level of significant deficiency, which essentially means an error could slip through the cracks that might be significant but not material, or we identify a material weakness in internal controls, then that means that we would have some concern that based on the internal controls in place, that some sort of material error could slip through the crack. In our audit report this year over internal controls, we did identify one significant deficiency in internal controls related to revenue recognition and properly reporting revenue in the correct period. Something of note there, when you are a governmental entity, you do have multiple bases of accounting that you're following for revenue recognition. You have your budgetary basis, you have your modified accrual for your governmental fund statements, and then you have your full accrual statements for your enterprise and proprietary funds, as well as your government-wide statements. So there are specifically related to those, revenue recognition is a little bit different depending on what basis of accounting. So it is quite complex when reporting revenue correctly. So in the current year, we did identify a number of errors within the reporting of revenue related to cutoff and presenting that in the proper period. So we did identify one finding that is included in that report this year. The next report that we issue is over the Oregon minimum audit standards. Because you are an Oregon municipality, Oregon requires that we perform a number of compliance procedures over budget law, how you utilize gas tax funding, how you're investing your investments, and what institutions you're using for your banks and cash. And so there's a number of procedures that we perform that Oregon requires that we do. In that report, we did not identify any compliance findings. that are required to be reported in that report, which speaks to how you monitor your budgets, because even an over expenditure of $1 is required to be reported as a non-compliant or as non-compliance in that report, and we did not identify any instances of non-compliance. So some good results there. In addition to compliance findings, we do, Oregon also requires that we report over internal controls over financial reporting. So the only thing to note there is that we do include that same compliance or that same internal control deficiency related to the revenue recognition. It is also included within that report as well. But it is not considered to be an additional finding or anything like that. But it's just required to be included in both our government report and the Oregon report. The last report, which we just issued last Friday, is over your federal awards, completing the single audit. And we issued our reports last Friday. And we audited 8 major programs this year. That is a significant amount of major programs for your federal awards. We issued clean or unmodified opinions over each one of those awards. And what I really want to highlight here is we audited 8 major programs. We did not identify any instances of non-compliance or control deficiencies over internal controls related to compliance. And when we're auditing that number of programs, I would say that's a huge accomplishment to not have any findings related to your federal awards. Another thing that I just want to note there related to the federal awards is, like I said, 8 major programs is a lot of coverage and a lot of awards to audit. It was a significant task for your team to be able to provide us all of that information in order to meet the deadline, which is actually today. So it's required to be submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse by today. And it was just a significant amount of work. So really appreciate your team working with us through that and getting us all the information that we needed, because that was not a small task. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, and he's going to go over the levy audits.
Thanks, Amanda. There's 2 tax levies that we continued to work on this year for fiscal year 2025, and I'll report first on the local option tax levy fund. That's an examination report that we issued on March 10th of this calendar year. There are 2 components to it. First, there's a schedule that presents the fund's revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the year. And then the second is the assertions that the commissioners communicated to the community that would be followed when these funds were collected and utilized. That was originally with the tax levies many years ago, and now we're, I believe, in the 3rd levy, and I'll walk through each of those assertions. So the first is that a special revenue fund would be used to account for all these dollars, and we continue to see that is the case. The second is that the general fund would continue to fund jail services. There was some concern that when this levy would come about, that those general fund dollars wouldn't be there anymore. And we do see that the general fund continues to support the county in this regard. Another assertion is that the adult jail bed would continue to operate at least 250 adult jail beds. We both visited the jail during the year, and we also looked at all the jail bed accounts during FY25. And we saw that we can say that 255 jail beds continued to operate. A fourth assertion related to youth services. That's both with detention and treatment, that they would operate 16 beds. And we saw that to be the case. You might remember last year, the treatment side did have a pause as there were some changes in the program. That worked itself out during FY25, and that function is now served with detention, and we saw that the beds continue to be used. The fifth assertion was that of those collected tax levy dollars, 91% would go to jail services, 9% would go to the youth services. We tested those allocations, and there was no issues noted there. And then really the final assertion is that the fund would receive a clean opinion. So the county's financial statements have a number of major funds that we audit, and one of those is the local option tax levy fund, and we issued a unmodified or clean opinion on those financial statements. So with that, all 6 assertions were met for the local option tax levy fund. So looks like those dollars continue to be used as the commissioners said they would be. I'll turn my attention to the second examination report over the Parks Levy Fund. That's a report we issued on February 25th of 2026. That presents the revenues and expenditures and changes in fund balance for the Parks Levy Fund. And then there are 4 assertions in that report. The first is that the special revenue, a particular special revenue fund would be used, and we saw that the county operated and maintained all those dollars within one special revenue fund that was unique to park services. The second assertion is that the county would collect 16 cents per every 1,000 of assessed value, and we saw that that was the tax dollars that were collected for this levy. And then we tested that the expenditures for the year would be specifically used on park services related to investment and improvement, maintenance and operation, special projects relating to parks, and then conservation and education specific to parks. So we tested a number of expenditures during the year and didn't find any issues with how those levy dollars were being used. And then finally, the Parks Levy Fund was also operated as a major fund and presented as such in the county's financial statements. And as part of that audit, we issued a clean opinion for that audit. So by all accounts, the Parks Levy Fund used the dollars that it collected for park services as the commissioners said those dollars would be spent. So that was also a clean report. So 2 levy funds that we tested and clean opinions across the board for both. That's really, I think, our prepared remarks, and we'll turn it back to Greg or the commissioners if they have any questions or additional comments.
Holmes. Well, part of the ballot measure was also a presentation at public forum in front of our sheriff as well. And so, Chair, if you let that, we'll let the sheriff come up to speak to the local levy.
Sheriff Wilkerson.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. I just want to say thank you to our community for continuing to support our public safety levy. We are using the dollars as we've always said we have. I think we built a lot of community trust, as evidenced by the last ballot return on the levy. I will say that we made the very conservative decision when we ran the last levy that we were not going to raise it. We are at the top end of spending that money. In fact, we're outspending the levy currently. But with that being said, we've been involved in a construction project at the jail for a year and a half that's going to hopefully be complete this summer, that we're hoping to build some efficiencies into how we can staff the jail. The jail design obviously is old, and we're hoping that with those efficiencies that we can then get back on the right side of where the levy collects and what we spend there. So again, I just want to say thank you to the community for their support, and we will continue to spend those dollars as wisely as we can as we continue to hit each of the marks that they were just talking about. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, to the board. Commissioner Farr.
No questions, Sheriff Wilkerson, just a couple of comments on the success of the levy from its outset. You know, and a remembrance of Sheriff Tom Turner, who was the originator, and Carrie Carver, remembering them both fondly and how much work they initially put into the first passage of this levy. And Sheriff Wilkerson, your team has been doing an outstanding job. And every year we have a positive result of the audit, which was an important part of that first levy when we passed it. In fact, it was integral in giving people the trust that we would be spending the money from the levy in the ways that we said we were going to. And I'll look at Kevin Muller-Laley, who I'd like to thank you for your 14 years that I know of service to Lane County in auditing. And every time I see you, I smile because you always give good news. And to hear the good news about the sheriff's levy and the 6 assertions of the levy that were all complied with on a regular basis, it really says a lot. Sheriff Wilkerson, you're sitting here, but you represent the entire agency when you sit here, and the tremendous work that is being done from top to bottom in your department, using about this much of the resource that you need. So I'd like to say thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for the continuation of the work, and understanding that representing not only your entire department, but also past sheriffs Harold and in memory of Tom Turner, of course. So I'd like to thank you again.
Any other comments? Vice Chair?
Thank you. I really just want to appreciate our financial staff. You've been doing a fantastic job, you and your team, as well, Sheriff, in your department. And this is a lot of money, of taxpayer money, that we have to shepherd, and good audits reflect the great work of our staff. So please thank them.
Okay. Well, I would, yeah, thanks everybody. I appreciate it. And, you know, I know we all worked very hard along with Sheriff Harold to get that jail levy passed, and it's exciting to see it used to its fullest potential, and everybody's holding their word. So sure appreciate that, Sheriff. It makes going after the next one a lot easier when everybody has faith and everybody knows that you're using the small amount of funds you have to the best of your ability and holding your word. Okay.
Ready for a motion?
If everybody's done, we're ready for a motion.
Okay. I'll move approval of Order 26-03-31-12 as presented.
Second. To the second. Vice Chair moves to approve Order 2603-31-12 in the matter of accepting the Lane County, Oregon Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025, and ordering corrective action to be filed with the Secretary of State. Seconded by Commissioner Lovell. Any discussion to the item? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sure appreciate it. Okay, up next, we have Public Works and the impacts of waste exportation on the public solid waste management system. Mr. Kincaid to the table.
I'll let you just. Thank you, Chair, and we're just going to get the presentation pulled up here, and we'll get started. I'll just note for commissioners that we've been planning this presentation for quite some time. And as you know, it was actually scheduled for a prior board meeting. There was a request from Waste Connections Incorporated, the parent company of Sanapak, EcoSort, and other haulers in Lane County and across Oregon, that we delay this presentation to allow for additional conversation. So in a good faith effort to continue those discussions and negotiations with Waste Connections to try to resolve these issues. We did delay the presentation. You will see it in the information for the board meeting today. There are a couple of letters from Waste Connections. We'll address some of that information. It's a little disappointing, I will say. We had a meeting a little over a week ago with the folks from Waste Connections and discussed, and we'll talk about the proposal that we put on the table, a very specific, very direct proposal. We got a response that didn't really respond to the proposal, asked a number of additional questions and information, which we're happy to provide. So those discussions haven't exactly advanced. The letters that you received then raise a number of issues that were not raised in our direct conversations with Waste Connections. So we'll do our best to respond to some of those. Fair amount of misinformation, misinformation, miscommunication, or just unfactual information. Some things that we actually do agree with what they've said in there. So let me first say, I was talking to Steve Adams, our policy director, yesterday about a lot of discussions in the state legislature recently about our healthcare system and the corporatization of our healthcare system, the impacts of the corporatization of our healthcare system, both on increased costs as well as reduced access to services. And, you know, I'll submit that we have a public solid waste system that is on the brink of collapse due to, in large part, the corporatization of the solid waste system. And I will say, and we will be very clear here today, we do not think that a fully public solid waste system is the right way to manage solid waste in a community. We also don't think that a fully privatized solid waste system is the way to go. The way we have this solid waste system structured in Lane County, the way that it's been structured for numerous decades, has worked well, where you have the landfill and the public services via the transfer stations and recycling programs and household hazardous waste. The things that are in the public interest to be managed effectively in the public interest are managed by the public, in the public good. And then the things that can be more efficiently provided by the private sector, i.e. waste hauling, are provided by the private sector. So that system has worked. It has worked up until very recently. It also requires partnership with our private partners as well as with our city partners. And we'll talk about where that's working and where we're facing some challenges. So it looks like we have the slides ready to go here, and I will ask Jeff to advance the slides to the next one here. We're going to talk about the budget impacts. Yeah, there we go. And I want to thank Jeff Kincaid, our management analyst in county administration, who's done a lot of work doing detailed research and compiling information for us to discuss with you today. So the reason that we're here today is that we do have a public solid waste system that is on the brink of collapse. We have a $5.17 million revenue reduction in our solid waste fund in the last fiscal year. We're projecting an annual structural deficit of over $2 million per year, which means that our expenses are exceeding our revenues by over $2 million a year. That has been driven, all of these budget challenges within the solid waste fund, which is an enterprise fund. And so we use no general fund. There are no tax dollars that go into the solid waste fund. It is funded exclusively by fees that are charged for those services. That's what an enterprise fund is. So we are facing this structural imbalance, which means that our expenses are exceeding our revenues because of the exportation of waste. A significant amount of waste that has historically gone to our Short Mountain landfill and the revenues collected there have supported that budget are now being exported to a private landfill owned by Waste Connections in Southern Oregon. So I'll just also mention that the system benefit fee, we've talked a lot about the system benefit fee, what that is, and we have a slide later we'll break down for you and for the public the components of the tipping fee, so when waste is brought to the landfill, to our landfill at Short Mountain, what that fee is and what the components of that fee are, over 50% of that fee is charged at our landfill at Short Mountain is for public good. It's for public services that are provided. And we'll break that down for you. So those public services that are provided include the transfer stations, 15 transfer stations throughout Lane County, waste reduction and recycling programs, household hazardous disposal, and the lowest minimum fee of any transfer station in Oregon, actually half the cost. You pay $14 is the minimum fee for 300 pounds of waste at a Lane County transfer station. If you also bring your recycling, you get a $1 discount. That is half the cost of the next closest minimum fee, which is, I believe, Deschutes County, which is $28 for their minimum fee. So these are all services that we're able to provide through Lane County that are supported by that system benefit fee. It's the fee that helps to pay for all of those public services that our community benefits. Because of the exportation of waste, all of this waste in the city of Springfield from Waste Connections and Sanapak, EcoSort, and also from Cottage Grove haulers is being exported down nearly 3 hours south to White City, to the White City landfill owned by Waste Connections. It has reduced the revenue, significantly reduced the revenue that we collect in this enterprise fund that helps to support those public services. Next slide, I'm going to briefly touch again on the system benefit fee, what this is. This is language here that is quoted from our Lane Code. This is the board-adopted policies and laws. The board adopts ordinances that are external facing. This code was adopted in 1999. I won't tell you where I was in 1999, but it was quite a long time ago. Over 26, 27 years ago. And at our presentation in December, we shared with the board that this ordinance, this code was adopted 27 years ago, and it was explicitly in the budget message from the county administrator at the time, Bill Van Vactor, and in the public record, where county officials were talking about the exportation of waste, in this case back in 1999, to the north. Haulers were hauling waste to Coffin Butte, and the county and our city partners recognized the problem with that. The problem is when all of that waste is hauled out of county, we can't support the public system that we have here locally. And so the community came together. The county and the cities came together and said, we need to put in place a mechanism by which we can support this public system. So the system benefit fee was created. And I won't read the whole thing, but just the bold parts here that say, this fee is a user fee charged to all solid waste generators in Lane County for the provision of services, including but not limited to waste reduction and recycling services, special and household hazardous waste services, and the user convenience transfer station system, all the things that I mentioned. I'll also say in Eugene, for example, our largest city, we have an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Eugene that codifies this fee. It specifically says this fee will be paid, and if the hauler hauls out of county, that they still will remit the system benefit fee. So even if a hauler chooses, they can choose to haul it to another landfill outside of the area, drive 3 hours in any direction they would like, but they still pay the system benefit fee. That's not cost effective for haulers, so in Eugene, they don't do that. They take it to Short Mountain, and actually we'll show that the rates in Eugene are lower. They're approximately $1 lower per month in Eugene than they are in Springfield, which is a really interesting dynamic because the tipping fee at Short Mountain is higher than it is at Waste Connections privately owned landfill in Southern Oregon. So I just want to quote from the Springfield franchise agreement. So we have an IGA with Eugene. We don't have an IGA with Springfield. What we have in Springfield, if you go back and you look at the record, the public record is actually Springfield was the first to adopt an ordinance that also codified the system benefit fee. So Springfield has the system benefit fee in their code, their city code. There's a little word there that you all are familiar with that says may as opposed to shall. And so it indicates, but if you look at the record, it was the clear understanding from the county and city officials at the time, and actually in the current franchise agreement that the city of Springfield has with Waste Connections and Sanapak, it still says that the city of Springfield will charge a franchise fee payable quarterly equal to 7% of its gross receipts for the hauler, quote, and this is all quote, less that the portion of user fee collected for remittance to Lane County. It's specifically in the franchise agreement between Springfield and Sanapak talks about the fee, the system benefit fee that goes to the county. Now, we acknowledge we don't have an intergovernmental agreement with Springfield. We didn't ever think we needed one because it was in the code. It was never an issue until just about 2 years ago when the waste started being hauled south. And that sort of technical legal issue has been challenged. So this is all to say that the point of the system benefit fee 27 years ago was to address the exportation of waste, to make sure that if waste was exported, there was still a public system that we could maintain. That's what's at risk of collapse today. Next slide. So this shows you, of course, our slide of Lane County, and you can kind of see the diamond-shaped symbols show the 15 transfer stations. We talk about Lane County being a county the size of the state of Connecticut, huge, immediately 5,000 square miles, and 12 incorporated cities. One of the things that's difficult in a large geographical county like ours, particularly with the hills and the mountains that you have to cross, the mountain passes, and the challenge of getting to the outlying areas, is for haulers to access, and for any public services actually, to get to rural residents. And so we've established the largest collection of transfer stations in the state of Oregon. No one has the number of transfer stations that we have in Lane County. 15. It used to be 16 a little over a decade ago. The Board of Commissioners, we had this conversation and said, you know, there's a lot of transfer stations. These transfer stations cost money. And so should we consider closing them? And the board at the time, and has over history, made a policy choice to say, they closed one transfer station at the time, but made a policy choice and has continued to make a policy choice to say, these transfer stations are important. So we need to subsidize them. And actually, in the letter from Waste Connections and Sanapak and the Pelroy Group, it said they comment that one of the comments is that they argue in their letters that the county has failed to manage the transfer stations effectively. Well, that's not actually true. The board has made a policy choice to provide a public service to the community, which by nature cannot make money. So transfer stations don't make money. They won't make money. If they're privatized, they will lose money and they'll be closed. The only reason that they are able to operate is because we subsidize them with system benefit fee to provide access for people throughout Lane County to dispose of their waste at an affordable rate. So they do not profit. We agree with Sanapak and Waste Connections that the transfer stations do not profit. If it's a failure, I guess the argument is it's a failure in a policy choice, but the policy choice the board has made historically is to say we need to make sure that we provide access for residents throughout Lane County to bring their waste. That's not something, again, that private companies will do. So these are the 15 transfer stations. That is one of the public benefits. We will have to have a conversation as part of our budget process upcoming here about the number of transfer stations. We simply cannot afford to continue to provide the number of transfer stations, to provide the type of services, recycling and other services, climate action and other really important services that the board has prioritized without the revenue for this fund. Next slide also shows you some pictures of examples. So we all, many folks have been to transfer station. I go regularly to the Glenwood transfer station and take my recycling, and I drop off my cardboard and glass and metal and other recycling materials, and I get my $1 discount, and then I can pay my $14 for my, the minimum if I have waste that I want to put into the pit. So we have recycling, that we provide at our transfer stations. We have free household hazardous waste, really important. We don't want people dumping hazardous waste into the water, into our wastewater system. Commissioner Farr, who has sat on the MWMC board, is very familiar with that, and so we provide, there are certain services we make free for the public because it's in the public interest. So does that cost? Yes, it costs, but it's a public value and a public priority. And then the 15 transfer stations, and again, I'll say $14, $15 is half the next lowest fee in Oregon. I think somewhere here in the stack of information I have, the rates at the other, Washington County is, the minimum fee is $45 for a minimum fee to haul waste to a transfer station. Multnomah County is $40. Marion County is $30. Deschutes is $28. And in Jackson County, White City, where Dry Creek, the Waste Connections owned landfill is, it is $29.95. So it's double what it is here in Lane County. Next slide. So there's been a lot of conversation recently about, well, the county, you know, this waste has been hauled as we understand, Waste Connections purchased Dry Creek, or I believe it was around 2022, 2023. There was speculation that there was hauling south to that landfill back in 2024. We did have some information that indicated communications, and actually we found out, as I understand, from a meeting of a city council in April of 2024. That's how we found out that Sanapak, I believe it was a Springfield City Council meeting where we found out that Waste Connections and Sanapak were hauling waste south. So we began monitoring that, and this is the information we've shared with the board to date. If you look at the total tonnage at Short Mountain from 2021 to 2025, you can see it was pretty, and remember we were in the COVID period, so there was a bit of a up and down during that. But in 2022 and 2023, very flat. Actually in 2024, by the end of 2024, we saw a 1.3% increase in waste. So this is, as we're monitoring the waste, we're seeing, yeah, we're hearing that there's some waste exportation happening, but the total amount of tonnage that was coming to Short Mountain was actually an increase. It wasn't until 2025 that we started seeing the very significant reduction, that nearly 15% increase that you see from Sanapak and EcoCert primarily. So we've shared this information, and this is the going concern that we have today is that reduction in waste. Of course, it would have been, I think the first communication that we had from Waste Connections was in December of 2025. First time that we had a direct communication about waste exportation was in December of 2025. So there was some information, speculation out there, and certainly we're seeing the more rapid impact now. So let's talk about solutions. There's the problem, covered the problem very briefly for you. In terms of the enterprise fund and the public services that we provide. Let's talk about some solutions. The first one that we will touch on, and I'll ask our County Counsel, Rob Bovett, who's been actively involved in these negotiations and communicating with the Waste Connections team and attorneys. The first one that we put on the table, really the solution to this problem, is for Waste Connections and its subsidiaries to return the waste to Short Mountain so that we can continue to manage that waste effectively. We'll show you in a few slides. The Short Mountain landfill is one of the best, if not the best, managed landfills, public or private, in the state of Oregon. It just happens to be publicly owned and operated. So we can manage that waste really effectively, and we can help support the public services that we provide to the community. So the solution is for that waste to return. We understand through various public conversations that Waste Connections and Sanapak has had with our city partners in Springfield and most recently in Cresswell. And I do understand on April 13th that the Cresswell City Council is scheduled to take a vote on terminating the IGA. Lane County does have an intergovernmental agreement like we do in Eugene with the city of Cresswell, has existed for many, many years. And that also requires the payment of the system benefit fee to Lane County if waste is hauled south. Now, Sanapak has been hauling waste out in Cresswell and outside of Cresswell to, as well as in Cottage Grove, the Cottage Grove haulers south, in violation of that requirement. We are working with them to rectify those issues. They claim that they were not aware of the intergovernmental agreement that we've had for a few decades with, as I understand, with Cresswell. So Cresswell is considering that. They've been approached by Waste Connections as Florence has been. I was notified by the Florence city manager. That Waste Connections approached them about the termination of the IGA. So we're seeing these conversations. Veneta terminated their intergovernmental agreement with Lane County in 2025, 24, 25, it was a couple years ago. So we're seeing this sort of rapid increase in, or pressure that is being applied to terminating these intergovernmental agreements that have existed for a long time to support this public system, so that the waste can be hauled south to the private landfill. So what we put on the table is to say, all right, at the Cresswell City Council, what Sanapak and Waste Connections presented was that their fee at Dry Creek, their privately owned landfill in Dry Creek, White City, is $97 per ton. And Lane County's tipping fee is $112 per ton. And so we sat down with Sanapak, and Mr. Bovet will cover this briefly. We proposed to reduce our rate to I believe it was the 2023 rate, essentially to $100 per ton, which is the equivalent of what Waste Connections fee will be next year. And let me turn it over to Mr. Bovet to just walk through what we have proposed specifically.
You want to do the next? Yeah. Thank you. For the record, Rob Bovet, County Counsel, Lane County. I engaged with counsel for Waste Connections after a series of letters back and forth, and we agreed to kind of sit down and have kind of a meeting to see if we could come to a global resolution that would be a win-win for everybody. With all things considered, we held our initial meeting back in December 18th. There were some additional email exchanges and letters that passed between us since then. As Steve already mentioned, we held a follow-up meeting on March 20th. Following that meeting, I did convey essentially a conceptual offer that Steve describes. It's charted out here at $100 per ton and reduce the post-MRF rates to 2024 levels. That's a composite of different rates, and so essentially backing things down. The idea here being to be competitive. So essentially say, let's keep Lane County solid waste here in Lane County so we can support our system. So, and we heard from Waste Connections that rates not only matter, they're the driving force, and we get it. And so we were trying to essentially sharpen our pencils and figure out how we could be competitive on a rate-to-rate basis with Waste Connections, and this is what we came up with to do so. That was conveyed to them at the end of that day after we discussed how we could make this fly. Now, keep in mind, and I will say, I'm sure Steve will say this as well, but if we reduced our rates from 112 to 100, that means we will have to do reductions. That means less income, so you're still looking at budget reductions, but the idea being hopefully not as severe as if we don't get the solid waste back here at all. So this was a way to essentially mitigate damage to the public system.
So, thank you, Mr. Bovet. And this is a big deal. So I'm just going to pause on this one to say this is a really big deal. This would bring Lane County's tipping fee at Short Mountain to significantly actually lower than Coffin Butte. Coffin Butte is $106 per ton. That's a privately owned landfill to the north. Would bring it below that. But we're listening to the concerns that are being expressed about concerns related to fees and impact on customers. And so we want to work with Waste Connections, Sanapak, and its subsidiaries, as well as all of our haulers. So one of the other questions that was asked is, well, would this fee be applied to the other haulers? Well, that is our plan, is that if Sanapak agrees to this, but we need, this is a partnership, and so we need to have all of that waste return and the volume to be there to support the public benefit in order then to provide that greater economy of scale. So the impact, and we'll show this in a slide of comparisons of residential rates, what actually this reduction would mean for other cities that are not exporting waste is it would have to mean a reduction in rates. So in Eugene, for example, in Eugene, Sanapak and Apex and Royal Refuse are bringing their waste to Short Mountain Landfill. They're paying $112 per ton. And the rates in Eugene, and we'll show this comparison, are lower than they are in Springfield. Well, if we lower our tipping fee at Short Mountain, that should lower the rates even further in Eugene and the other cities where the haulers are already bringing their waste to Short Mountain, right? Because that cost is going to be lowered. In the cities where Waste Connections already hauling out of county and they're paying themselves $100 per ton, and then we're going to meet that rate, those rates presumably would remain flat. So it's an important, thing for us all to consider. But this is a big deal. As Mr. Bovet said, we still will need to make some adjustments in the Waste Management Fund, but this is the long-term solution. If we can't reach agreement on bringing that waste to the best managed landfill in the state of Oregon, then we have a real problem. And again, I'll say that our ability to manage that waste effectively, what we did hear back from Waste Connections, the one thing they did seem to indicate they were willing to do was to bring the post-material recovery facilities, so the already sorted materials, construction and post-sorted materials back. Now that waste is, we provide a significant discount for, and really what we want is the commingled waste so that we can effectively manage that, sort it out, separate the waste as most effectively as possible. So that's what we're looking for. So next slide, just real briefly, we've talked about waste, we brought up Waste Connections just, for the board and public's benefit. Who is Waste Connections Incorporated? Who is this company you keep referring to? And the reason that we're talking about this company in particular is because this is where the waste exportation is happening. Waste Connections, and this was noted by some public speakers this morning, it's a publicly traded multinational corporation based in Texas. They do business in 46 states, 6 Canadian provinces, so large multinational corporation. They are the parent company of Sanapak, EcoSort, County Transfer and Recycling, and Waste Reduction Service in Lane County. So you may be familiar with Sanapak and EcoSort and County Transfer Recycling, which is in Florence. These were all previously privately owned. The Pape family owned Sanapak for many years, a locally invested family. So those companies have all been bought up by Waste Connections and are now being managed with the original local names that were in place to maintain that brand. And actually that brand value, that local brand value is really critical. It has a lot of value to the corporation. They've reported revenue of $9.467 billion in 2025. They've made 80 acquisitions worth over $6.2 billion in the last 4 years. We're going to just provide a little bit so you understand the context of, and this is helpful, I think, what's the difference between a privately run, landfill and public services versus the private. And again, we will say we're strong advocates for a public-private partnership, a system that utilizes private investment and efficiency along with public good. This is from the Waste Connections Securities and Exchange Commission Form 10-K filing from 2024. They say, quote, "We generally seek to avoid highly competitive large urban markets and instead target markets where we can attain high market share either through exclusive contracts, vertical integration, or asset positioning." We added that emphasis. And then they also say in their filing, "In markets where waste collection services are provided under exclusive arrangements or where waste disposal is municipally owned or funded or available at multiple sources, we believe that controlling the waste stream by providing collection services under exclusive arrangements is often more important to our growth and profitability." So this is important. We'll show then on the next slide just a graphical representation of where Waste Connections it's hard to track because the local names are maintained, Sanapak and EcoSort and County Recycling and Transfer Station. So, you know, this is just a graphic across the state of Oregon of it might be a little bit hard to read, but it's in the slides posted online, of the various companies that are owned by Waste Connections in Oregon. Those include haulers, transfer stations. They do provide some education services in Jackson County, Materials Recovery Center, and the landfill, a couple landfills that are owned in Oregon there. So again, I will hit this point, fully supportive of a public-private partnership solid waste system where the landfill and the public services are managed in the public good, and the efficiency of the private sector can be put into place through waste hauling. That's a really effective way to go about it. I'm going to ask, so that's sort of the tipping fee in the company, and then I want to ask Mr. Bovet to talk a little bit about franchising, some questions about, and this is one of the other things in addition to lowering the proposal to lower the tipping fee at Short Mountain, also look at franchising in the unincorporated areas.
And thank you again, Steve. I'm not going to get too deep into franchising, but I just want to give you kind of an overview, and I'm really seeking more direction as to where you want our office to go with this, if at all. So currently, Lane County does not franchise solid waste haulers in the unincorporated areas. That's an option that the board could consider. Some counties do, some counties don't. Some cities do, some cities don't, as you know from what Steve's already reported to you. But franchising is a way to engage in regulation of these activities. You can, for example, engage in rate regulation. You might decide not to. You can engage in exclusive franchising, picking, much like in other areas, ambulance service areas, for example, an exclusive provider of the service. Springfield does that. City of Springfield does that. You might very well choose to franchise and have it be not exclusive. City of Eugene does that as their model. So you can have multiple different haulers essentially competing for customers. There are a myriad of options in terms of how you might franchise. Another example might be flow control, saying, hey, things you collect in this area need to be delivered to Short Mountain, for example. And there is a laundry list of things that we could get into in discussing franchising. But I guess my first question, before we even, and I say we, our office brings you back various options, because this would all be implemented through an ordinance process. You would enact an ordinance requiring a franchise, setting forth the procedures whereby franchises would be granted, setting forth what things you would regulate, what things you might not regulate, and how you would go about doing that. Before we could even begin to even craft such an ordinance, I would need direction from the board on all of these various points, and we certainly don't have time to go through that kind of thing today. But as a starting point, I would need to know whether or not the board is even interested in engaging in regulatory activities like franchising of solid waste haulers, like flow control. And so that's basically what this slide is here to present you with these potential options of handling these matters. Franchising would not go within to cities, much like the fee that Steve described. We only have the regulatory power to do franchising in unincorporated areas. Anything that would be done within cities would have to be by the cities or in cooperation with the cities.
And I'll just note that in Deschutes County, for example, I've had a number of discussions with the Deschutes County Administrator and the Bend City Manager. They are going through a process between the county and the cities. They actually termed the cities, Redmond, Bend, and I'm not sure if Lapine has franchise agreements with haulers, but the cities have terminated their franchise agreements, as has the county in Deschutes, and they are going through a collective franchising process. That's a true partnership where the cities and the county are working together to say, you know, actually, we should, there's combined benefit, right? The county is providing the landfill. In our case, we're managing the landfill and the public services. The cities in Lane County and in most cities throughout Oregon are regulating the hauling work that's happening. It would be ideal if we could do that in collaboration. Admittedly, it's more difficult in Lane County because we have 12 incorporated cities, not just 3 like they do in Deschutes. But, you know, when we started looking at this, Lane County is in the minority of counties in Oregon that do not franchise in the unincorporated areas. So it is not, let's be very clear, this franchising in the unincorporated areas is not the solution to the problem. It's sort of a bit of a side, like, we should do it. We believe it's in the public interest to do it in a number of ways. And actually, we believe it will help support our smaller rural haulers more effectively. This is something that was raised in one of the letters by the haulers, and we agree with what they're suggesting, which is there needs to be more analysis and more public process. Right now, we're just seeking board direction on whether or not you think we should pursue that. So franchising in the unincorporated areas is something we believe we should do. Again, it's not the ultimate solution. Next slide, we'll say service reductions here, last option. We're going to have to do it regardless. The minimum, at minimum, we will need to look at a closure of 3 to 5 transfer stations in Lane County. Again, we have the most transfer stations of any county in Oregon. There is more access for residential for customers in Lane County for hauling services, so that's good in terms of an access. You know, the cost to contract with a hauler is greater than it is to bring waste to a transfer station. And so there is an impact on residents in that way. But we will need to look at our transfer stations. We'll need to look at other services, our climate action work that is happening. We will also need to look at our rates at the transfer stations, the hours at the transfer stations. And so all of this will be a discussion as part of the upcoming budget process. We, again, are hopeful that we can mitigate some of those impacts through negotiation, first with Waste Connections, and if we can get agreement there, then with all of the haulers throughout Lane County. So let's move to comparisons here. I think this will be the last section we're going to talk about, and then we'll take questions and discussion from the board. So this, let's go to this slide here. This was raised, you know, the last time we came before you. We've cut this a couple different ways. Eugene and Springfield rates. We're trying to just give, the rates look different in jurisdictions throughout Lane County. The travel costs for haulers are different. In Florence, for example, Waste Connections, it's County Recycling and Transfer Services, that is the company owned by Waste Connections. They're the single hauler. They have we believe some of the higher rates in Lane County. They actually haul their waste to the Florence Lane County transfer station, and then we haul the waste from Florence to Short Mountain. So we take on a significant cost in terms of the transportation. But here in Eugene, we want to compare Eugene and Springfield. Last time we were before you, we provided an apples to apples that subtracted out. We subtracted out the yard waste from the Springfield rate. Here we're going to do it the other way. The best way to get at an apples to apples comparison is to show what the actual impact to a residential customer is. So in Springfield, if you look now, services, you pay a bill on a quarterly basis. So we're breaking out, these are actual bills that are screenshot on the left and right. So in Springfield, it's an actual bill from Sanapak that shows the 3-month cost for a 35-gallon can for weekly service, as well as the green waste charge, and that total comes to $92.70 for the 3 months. And remember, in the Springfield, so the monthly cost is $30.90 for a $35 can weekly service with yard green waste removal. If you don't have green waste removal, you have to haul it yourself, your yard waste, to Lane Forest Products or Rexius and pay for that cost there because there is no burning within city limits. In Springfield, Sanapak, Waste Connections, is paying $97 per ton, including what they're saying is the transportation cost to haul it 3 hours south to White City. So they're paying $15 less per ton in tipping fees, right, on their cost that they're paying themselves for their landfill that they own. And yet the rate is higher. It's almost $1 higher per month. Then in Eugene, because we have an IGA, and I will submit that, you know, the way that the city of Eugene has structured this arrangement, they have an IGA with the county, they franchise, there are 3 haulers, so there is competition, there's choice for residents. They require that waste either come to stay locally, or that if it's going to get hauled out, that the system benefit fee be remitted. They standardize the profit margin. They guarantee, in Eugene, they actually, in the franchise agreement, they guarantee a profit margin. So each hauler is guaranteed to have a profit margin, right? So that profit is guaranteed, as well as the public benefit is guaranteed through that. The other thing that Eugene does is, you know, they're contributing to the system benefit fee at the landfill. They annually review the hauler expenses. So they are reviewing all of the expenses from the haulers. They allow their haulers to set the rates that allow for them to have that standardized profit margin. And they ensure that the haulers aren't price gouging, right? Because that's why you franchise for services like this, particularly in areas where they're exclusive franchises, so you don't have a monopoly, that you can have, you can avoid that temptation for price gouging. And again, this allows them then to include green waste as part of their pricing at a lower combined rate than Springfield. So I'll just submit the way we should be doing this is, in our opinion, following the Eugene model and working with all of our cities to say, how do we make sure that we have rates that are low, that are affordable and as low as possible for our residents, and we also maintain this critical public value, this public system that we have. Again, Eugene, in Sanapak, the bill is for weekly service for a $35 can with yard debris is $89.76. So you see the difference divided by 3, $29.92. So almost $1 less in Eugene, and yet the hauler is paying $15 more per ton for tipping. Does that make sense? Okay, next slide. Wanted to give you a brief landfill comparison. So that was residential. If you're a resident in Lane County, that was the last slide. If you're a resident in Lane County, here's what, you know, in Eugene and Springfield, under that scenario, if you're paid, that's the most common scenario, $35-gallon can weekly service. For the haulers, what the haulers pay is at the landfill. So we provided here Lane County's tipping fee at Short Mountain, which is on the left, and then Dry Creek, which is in White City outside of Medford, which is owned by Waste Connections. Lane County's tipping fee includes 3 components. What we call the disposal fee, that's the actual cost for us to manage that landfill with the liner and the staff that it takes to manage all of that waste. $51.34 is what we charge for the disposal fee. What Waste Connections is charging, as best we can determine based on the information that's been publicly provided, is $97.63. That's what they charge themselves for the disposal. It's likely that transportation costs are wrapped up into that to haul the waste 3 hours south and back. But that's the comparison. To just put the waste in the pit, I'll call it, okay, in the landfill, it's almost twice as much for the privately owned. What Lane County includes in our rate, in addition to the disposal fee, is the system benefit fee, which is what pays for the transfer stations and the recycling and household hazardous waste. That's actually more than the disposal fee. That's the public benefit, as well as the other fee, which is a fee that the board approved many years ago to help support long-range planning in land management. This is because we can't subsidize our long-range planning work because our general fund property tax rate is so low, which is what most counties do, is they subsidize with general fund. We can't do that, and so we've added that $7.49 fee. So if you circle that 53, 63, and 749, that over $60 of our $112 rate is for public services. That's not provided in the private sector, and it won't be provided in the private sector, okay? So that's the difference. Again, what we have proposed to Waste Connections, and if Waste Connections agrees, we will work with all the haulers on that, because this is about volume. We have to have the volume, otherwise the model doesn't work. It's economy of scale, is a $100 rate. And what Dry Creek's rate will be, I believe effective July 1 of 26, what they've proposed, what they've shared publicly to the city of Crestwell is $100. So they're going to increase their fee to themselves from 97 to 100. And so we propose we will meet your fee. That is also reflective of the fee that was in place. $100 was the fee approximately around 2023, I believe, for Short Mountain. So that takes us back to that place. So another way to look at this is if you added the public benefit, the cost of the public benefit that Lane County is providing to the private landfill in Dry Creek, the fee would be over $150, right? So if you took what their disposal rate is, plus the public services, and they provided all those public services, they'd be charging $150, theoretically. A couple ways to look at that. All right, next slide. Last couple slides here. I want to show you the difference in publicly owned versus privately owned landfills in Oregon. This is an important component. Again, we've said privately operated haulers is a good way to go, and that's what we have here, and we want to continue that. Publicly owned landfills, we believe, is the more responsible structure that is in the public interest. This is a picture of Short Mountain Landfill. It's operated for the public benefit and in the public's best interest. Approximately 92% of Short Mountain Landfill area is monitored. So we monitor 92% for methane emissions to determine where are we at, how are we managing this, and what is the impact, the environmental impact. 92% of our landfill area is monitored. We're consistently taking steps to reduce methane emissions instead of deferring that, and that's our goal with additional investments in the system in the future is to further reduce the impacts of methane gas on our community. And then we're actively monitoring large sections of the landfill and addressing those methane. Then we'll share, you've seen a lot of reporting. This is a picture from Coffin Butte to the north of us. They were just fined $3.1 million from the Department of Environmental Quality. Approximately 47% of the landfill is monitored for emissions. So this is at Coffin Butte. What are the Dry Creek rates? I thought we had the Dry Creek rates, was it 70%, approximately?
69.5%.
69.5% of Dry Creek is not monitored. Almost 70% of Waste Connections, so it's important to note, because we're going to show you a slide of what the impacts are from the monitoring, but almost 70% of the area of Dry Creek is not monitored versus the 8% that's not monitored in Lane counties. So it's just important to note the difference in impact in terms of public value and public good from privately versus publicly owned landfills. And then we'll go here to this last couple slides. This shows you methane capture. So this is the methane plume data that is publicly provided, and this is a comparison of, at the top, Lane County Short Mountain Landfill, and you'll see 80% source impact, and then 6 plumes noted, and at the bottom you have Dry Creek Landfill. That's the Waste Connections own landfill. They have a higher methane flow, more persistent flows, higher number of plumes, and an increasing trend, as well as the fact that 70% of the landfill is not monitored. Last slide, I think we have this one too. This is also publicly available through the Department of Environmental Quality in Oregon. It's just a comparison of private versus public landfill monitoring. You see Dry Creek is at the top there. Nearly 70% is not monitored. Then you have the landfill in Wasco County, Coffin Butte. This is the amount that is not monitored. Coffin Butte, Finley Butte, and it's all, look at Short Mountain, Lane County, the 3 at the bottom, so the least amount that's monitored. In other words, the most amount of monitoring that's happening is by the public landfills. All right, we'll go to the last slide here and then turn over for questions. Our recommendation to the board, I understand this is a lot of information. We did cut a lot of things out because we just wanted to get straight to the point. We have on the table a proposal that we think is very straightforward in both the interest of ratepayers in Lane County as well as the public services that we provide for this system by lowering our tipping fee. We also do believe that we should pursue franchising in the unincorporated areas. It's the responsible thing to do, and we're in the minority of jurisdictions that don't do that. So we want to continue those negotiations with Waste Connections. This is an urgent issue. I'm willing to set up weekly meetings to work through these issues, or as often as it takes, to resolve these issues. It's really important. We do believe that we should initiate an audit of the Waste Connections records for unincorporated areas related to the waste that has been hauled out of county where the system benefit fee has not been recuperated. That is an ongoing issue. We'd love to just negotiate those things because our focus is on the future. It's not on litigating the past. So we're more interested in finding a solution for the future that's in everyone's best interest than we are litigating the past, but we do think we have an obligation to look into that. We do think we should explore franchising waste haulers in unincorporated areas, as well as looking at flow control. We agree with the haulers in saying that needs to be a process, and we want to have a process that engages the different stakeholders there, that has good analytics and good policy justification, and that will require a rather lengthy process. And we have. We have finalized a little over a week ago, I finalized a budget proposal for the board that you will see at the end of April, along with the budget committee, that will show a number of service reductions and fee adjustments in our waste management system to address these issues, particularly if we're not able to reach resolution. So I'm going to stop there and turn over for questions, Chair.
Thank you. That was a lot to the board. Any questions? Vice Chair.
Thank you. I guess I'll start us off. I'm going to ask some questions back up to kind of the beginning of the slides on the budget impacts specifically. So in the budget impacts, it's showing that we are down a little over $5 million in the last fiscal year. And specifically due to the system benefit fee not being paid. You've shown the language in our charter that specifically states that regardless of where they're taking their garbage, the system benefit fee is an obligation to the county that must be paid. So I just want to confirm that the $5.17 million in revenue reduction is lost system benefit fee charges that are otherwise due.
Yeah, so the total is going to be a combination of system benefit fee as well as disposal fees.
Correct.
Okay. So do we know how much of that is Waste Connections versus Cottage Grove Garbage? Because it's my understanding Cottage Grove Garbage just reached out to make themselves whole. Is that right?
I don't have those numbers in front of me, Commissioner, Vice Chair, but we'd be happy to get those to you. It's a pretty small portion, that's the Cottage Grove part.
That's what I figured.
And Cottage Grove reached out to rectify system benefit fee that had not been paid outside of the city limits. It's my understanding that they're still hauling out of county for waste that's collected in city limits. Because the city of Cottage Grove retracted from the IGA, the hauler is able to export their waste out of county.
Okay. So of the part that Sanapak Waste Connections, of the $5.17 million, we can garner as a large part attributable to them. And you said that is a combination of system benefit fees and tipping fee or?
And disposal fee.
And disposal fee.
Yes, Vice Chair.
So I'm trying to clarify for myself, what portion of that is the system benefit fee portion? So if the majority of the $5 million is associated to Sanapak Waste Connections, and that is some mixture of system benefit charge and the disposal and other fee, right? It's a combination of all this. Okay. So regardless of whether they're bringing it into us or hauling it away, least like around 50% of that is going to be attributable to the system benefit fee that is due to the taxpayers of Lane County.
That's correct. About half of that has been system benefit fee in the past. The challenge is where we don't have an intergovernmental agreement with different cities, so we're not able to enforce that system benefit fee to be charged. So that's happening in Springfield, Cottage Grove, and Bonita. I think also Coburg possibly.
In the way, just to be clear, Commissioner, the way that the system benefit fee is applied within Lane County is at Short Mountain. So when the hauler pays this $112 per ton, that's where the system benefit fee is remitted. Any hauler that is bringing to Short Mountain is paying. It's when the waste is, and there are no places where we have an IGA where a hauler is hauling it out of county. That's why, because it's unaffordable. And that's why the system benefit fee was put in place 27 years ago, right? So, for example, again, in Springfield, it was always paid because they always brought it to Short Mountain. And then when Sanapak was acquired by Waste Connections and they acquired the landfill, their private landfill, then they started hauling down there. And because it's sort of this loophole, a way to get around it. Even though it's in the franchise agreement with Springfield, even though it's in the Springfield code, we don't have an IGA that gives us the ability to collect it.
So one of the recommendations that you specifically noted was an audit of what's being transported down south in the last few years, where we're seeing this change. And the reason I'm getting at that is because you had mentioned you're not necessarily wanting to relitigate the past. But my position is, you know, all that we do here at the county is owned, all our assets are owned, all the income that's provided through taxes and fees to the county are taxpayer money. They're resident-owned assets. And when a fee is not remitted to the county, that's due, the taxpayers are the ones that suffer. So the money that is being diverted or not remitted to the county is money that Sanapak Waste Connections owes to the taxpayers of Lane County. And I don't personally feel like I'm willing to bargain with the taxpayers' money that's due them when these agencies don't pay the fee that is so clearly stated in our charter that is due, regardless of where they send it, even though that's another part of this conversation. They are shorting the taxpayers of Lane County money that would otherwise be used for services that goes to them. And that's not something I'm willing to look the other way for. I think that is one subject, is ensuring that the taxpayers are fully funded from Sanapak Waste Connections as they are due. And then I see a separate issue of how we're going to fix this going forward. But I just wanted to make that particular position clear and clarify of the $5.17 million, if we do the audit, which I would support, to figure out exactly what is due the taxpayers of Lane County. I'd also had a question on the rate comparison slide. Yes. So of the, here, I've got it too. These two slides are clearly showing the bills from the two different cities. In Springfield, this, all the waste that's being hauled and collected here is going straight down to Dry Creek without any payment to the system benefit charge to taxpayers. Yet they're paying more than Eugene, where all that is actually being taken to Short Mountain and the system benefit fee is remitted. So I'm curious, I mean, all this can deduce is that they're profiting off Springfield while everybody else is paying into the system in Eugene for the transfer stations and helping fund our other fee, which is our land management fee. Do I have that right?
Well, I studied business in business school, so I have my opinions about what that means. We can only speculate because we don't know. But that's part of what we're trying to do here is it doesn't quite add up in terms of our understanding and the information that we have available here, why they're paying less to tip and the rate is higher, right? They're paying more to tip in Eugene and the public benefit is being provided and the rate is lower. So it doesn't add up, and we can all only speculate about that, but the numbers are pretty clear. So it's like, you know, until we're the $97 tipping fee that they're charging themselves was what they presented to the city of Cresswell in a public meeting. So that's how that information, we understand that includes transportation costs, and then our rate is what it is. So it doesn't quite add up, I would agree.
And from what I'm gathering from the information is they're collecting, and this is a question, collecting trash in the unincorporated area and commingling it with Springfield and hauling it south? Is this what we're seeing?
There is some information to indicate that, and this is some of what our back and forth has been with the attorneys at Waste Connections they have acknowledged that. I think that they have framed it as sort of incidental. I don't know if that's the right word, but they've sort of said, well, if it's happening, it's sort of, it's not intentional and it's sort of incidental. We don't have, this is why the audit would be really helpful to understand better the extent to which it is happening. We also know what's happening in Cresswell because they were not aware that that there was an IGA with Cresswell. And then they became aware of it because they've been hauling Cresswell waste, as we understand, to Dry Creek as well. But that's not allowed under the intergovernmental agreement. So now they're in front of the city of Cresswell requesting the termination of the IGA so that they can haul south without having to remit the system benefit fee.
Thank you for that. I think those are my initial questions. I'm very interested in what my colleagues think, but I think as a commissioner in a largely rural space that the transfer stations that are located out there are integral to the communities. And knowing that, Sanapac Waste Connections is changing their business model or maybe just advancing their business model in order to increase market share and set rates is actually at the detriment of our rural communities and our rural transfer stations. So there's a direct link. If you reduce transfer stations in the rural communities, there's going to be a higher amount of dumping, which is exponentially more expensive to clean up, in which we will not have the funding to clean up, in which the case there's just debris in the rural communities. So, the profit structure of a large corporation like Sanapac Waste Connections is really going to harm our rural communities that rely on those transfer stations, because they're obviously what you presented is showing that those are basically on the chopping block at the moment, in which case we will probably see people come in here at public comment and be very upset that those transfer stations are going to be slated for potential closing. knowing that that is the way in which they largely dispose of their trash outside the city limit. So I'm very frustrated with that. I did read that Sanapak Waste Connections provided a letter and public comments to us, which did not indicate in that letter that they were actually interested in having a goodwill conversation with the county in order to find a solution, which is what we all want and what is in the best needs of our community for everybody involved. We want to have haulers that are going to be partners with us. And we want a system that actually functions and pays for itself without, having a system that is so expensive, people aren't going to use it. So it's a balancing act. And as you alluded to in the very beginning, we are seeing in our healthcare system this same corporate vertical integration model in business terms coming into our community and changing to the detriment of our community members how they're receiving care. And I see the exact same thing happening in the waste management industry coming in and manipulating some of our mom and pop haulers into thinking that they have the same interests and incentives that they do. They do not. They have very different interests than our small mom and pops. Their interests are capturing market share and setting the rates, which is going to translate into their interest in taking over these small mom and pops. And that's not to the benefit of our consumers. Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just reading Tony Soprano's quote.
Anybody else? Commissioner Olival.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. There's a lot to unpack here, and obviously we don't have time today to do all this, so I've got a page and a half of questions that I need asked, that I need answered. But I think the thing that I'm coming by, I'm not here to attack Sanapak or Waste Connections and all that, but in my mind, what I'm thinking about here is the difference between capitalism and subsidizing is what I'm hearing mostly. And I'm wondering about the business model that was of 24 years ago, if it's still sustainable in 2026 and forward. Those are the questions I have. When I'm listening to us say that we're blaming a capitalistic thinking on trash and that kinds of things going elsewhere because it's feasibly better, or whoever knows what those decisions are made from, and saying that it's up to us to make sure that we control everything so that we can subsidize our transfer stations. Some of those terms start to kind of gnaw at me a little bit to agree with. So the thing that I want to bring forth is if we're already the cheapest model and we're thinking about discounting our rates again, there's an old saying, I'm sure Mr. Mokreisky, you saw this in business school as I did, is that you can raise your prices 20% and lose 30% of your clientele and still make the same amount of money. That was kind of a golden rule of what my business professor said. But the same thing is also token if you decrease your rates by a certain amount, that means you got to have 30% more clientele to make the same amount you did before you discounted your rates. So to me, being the cheapest model is already one strike against us. Perhaps maybe we're not reading the tea leaves like we should, and we should be charging more because we're not sustainable. So then we're going to discount that again, which will also hurts our sustainability going forward, which means we're going to have X number of volume to make the money we were making prior to the cut of 10% and try to make money more than that. To me, that doesn't sound like we're going the right direction. So in 5 years after that agreement is over, then what? That's only 5 years. So in my mind, I'm thinking if we go ahead with a $174 million clean lane project, we're going to have debt service on that. And in 5 years, who knows what implosion we're going to face economically if Waste Connections then says, yeah, it was a nice 5 years. Thank you very much, but we're going to go back to Dry Creek. I mean, we're going to have so much flow control in order. We're going to have franchising in order of that. I'm not sure I'm on board with of either of those points to even try to mitigate what may happen in 5 years. I don't see this plan succeeding. I see us throwing a lot of blame out there and a lot of finger pointing when maybe we need to come back and have some serious discussions about if our model going forward is sustainable. Now, let me also just say one thing. Like I said, I've got a lot of questions, but I don't want to take a lot of time from my fellow commissioners. In my town, Springfield's been paying the system benefit fee, according to them, since 2014. In anticipation that the Glenwood transfer station would be moved on a handshake deal that they understood it was moving. And so my question is for my constituents is, what are my constituents benefiting from the system benefit fee if Lane County is not have on its docket to move the transfer station other than just casual conversation? So that's my first question. And then the next question I have is some of the things we've talked about Sanapak has proposed on the email that they put into public docket. And there was 4 things they said, and I think they're worthy of mention. They want to defer action on the waste export agenda until a comprehensive independent analysis of the proposals have been completed and made publicly available. They too want an audit. So let's join with them and have an audit. They want to release all underlying data and studies that inform the current proposal so that stakeholders can provide informed comment. So everybody wants to come to the table according to what they're saying. I like that. They want to engage in meaningful consultation with affected haulers and the public before advancing franchising or flow control measures. I think this is prudent. I'm not, like I said, on board with the franchising thing at this point. I think sometimes that feels to me like eminent domain of business. I have questions about how people's customer base would be absorbed or valued if somebody else took over their particular areas. And fourth, Sanapak says they want to commission an independent rate impact study before any vote on franchising or flow control. Your slides on independent rates and that sort of thing, in my mind, they're not as solid as I would like them to be. I mean, there's some speculation in there. I think I'd like a little more actual confirmation on what the actual costs are and what the actual benefits are and what the actual splits are. I'm seeing that somehow we don't really quite have the nail on the head on that. So those are my comments for now, Chair. I'll yield to someone else. Thank you.
Commissioner Farr.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Well, gosh, that's a great presentation. A lot of information, Steve, in terms that I didn't fully understand always, and I'm sure that people watching don't fully understand a lot of the terms and the messages that were delivered in your presentation and also in subsequent comments by commissioners. So I'm going to try to talk a little bit in terms people do understand. But before I do that, I've been a Sanapak customer for greater than 40 years. And I'm happy that I pay less than people in Springfield do for my hauling. I've saved a lot of money on that over the years, clearly. I also use our transfer sites. I use the Bolton Hill site maybe twice a year to haul a small trailer load of trash out there, and I pay $14. Paid $14 just recently. I really am happy that that is there. It's actually closer to my house than Glenwood is, so it's easier for me to haul to that transfer site. Glad that's open. I also take my hazardous waste. I don't generate a lot, but sometimes there's a little bottle of Formula 401, that I don't want to dump down the drain. And I don't know exactly what to do with it. Paint I can dry and throw the trash cans away. But I take stuff to Glenwood, never have to wait. Never charge me anything. And I have a question regarding that, about where do people in Springfield take their hazardous waste, but we can get to that question. I also am on the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission, which is a public system for the other kind of wastewater. And currently, our wastewater system, like our solid waste system, is a very efficient local government-owned system. And we are looking to expand. The Cresswell wants to join us. They want to pipe their sewage from Cresswell to Glenwood, and coincidentally, which is also where our solid waste transfer site is, and they're eager to do it. It's not going to be inexpensive, and we're looking at every way that we can to facilitate that happening. Recently, Junction City has also said they want to haul their trash waste, their wastewater, to a localized local system, because as close to local as you can keep that stuff, the better off you are, unless there's a better system that is within a few miles. And that's why Junction City wants to come in. That's why Cresswell wants to come in. And ultimately, that would include Goshen and the Shore Mountain landfill. All of that would be pumped into the Metropolitan Wastewater Management System. It's a much more efficient system. And like our our solid waste facility, which is 97% monitored, well, our MWMC is closer to 100% monitored. And in Junction City and in Creswell right now, I'm not sure where their waste goes. It goes into creeks nearby, whereas MWMC processes it, put it into a large river, and it's as clean going into the river as the water coming down from up in the mountains. So that's all a very good local system. So how do I put this into terms that people understand? So I have a question right now. People in Springfield, they don't have a choice of who to use as a hauler, right? It is Sanapak. That's the only person they can deal with.
Correct.
Or they can haul it themselves to Short Mountain, or to Goshen, or to Short Mountain, but and have it hauled by our trucks to Short Mountain.
Glenwood.
To Glenwood, thank you. So people in Springfield don't have a choice, but they do pay more than I pay in Eugene. Okay. So my message then is this, and I'm curious. Before my message is, how do they get the trash from Springfield to 170 miles away to Eagle Creek?
I presume they drive it.
Yeah, clearly, it's not a conveyor belt. What kind of trucks do they use? Do they consolidate into big trucks, or does each garbage truck drive down there?
Sure, it's my understanding they bring it to EcoSort, their sister company there in Glenwood, and then it's consolidated into large tractor trailers and transported down that way.
So it's 18-wheelers that haul that stuff down. And they haul it, here's to the people of Springfield, they haul it past Goshen, past Short Mountain, past Gold Hill, past Creswell, past Cottage Grove, past Sutherland, past Roseburg, past Merlin, past Grants Pass, all the way to Eagle Creek, over 3 mountain passes, 170 miles each direction. So that if I put a banana peel into the garbage can instead of into recycling in Springfield, it goes all that distance and it is dropped off in Jackson County. So the good people of Jackson County get Springfield's waste. Okay, that's the term, that's what I'd like people to understand in Springfield, is your stuff is being taken past all of those cities that I just mentioned to Eagle Creek on a daily basis on 18-wheelers. And the people of Cottage Grove, soon, your garbage may be hauled, instead of a few miles up the road to Short Mountain, past all those towns that I just mentioned, over 3 mountain passes. We'll digest that, if you will. So the net result for me is that it alarms me that the garbage would be hauled past all of those cities on 18-wheelers to 170 miles each direction. Now, the trucks come back empty. I presume they don't do a backhaul like commercial carriers do. They come back empty, using whatever diesel they use for that over those 3 mountain passes. That's what I'd like people in Springfield to think about. Think about what is happening with your garbage. Once again, I'm a loyal customer of Sanapak. I've been for 40 years, and they're great service. They do a really good job for me. And I am not opposed to private industry. I'm a retailer by profession. All the years I'm a retailer, you sell stuff to people at prices they can afford. I'm not opposed to that. What I'm opposed to is what seems to me a forceful attempt to force Lane County into doing something that a large corporation wants to do, and which is whatever they put on the letter that Commissioner Lovell just read from. So I'm disappointed in that. Quite frankly, people in Springfield, I'm disappointed that you're garbage and that you're okay with that, if you are okay with that.
Mr. Trigger.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Farr, for mentioning the people of Jackson County, too. I wonder how they feel about waste being imported into their community. But we're not Jackson County commissioners, so I'll leave it to them. I have a couple of, I'll try to be efficient. You have 4 recommendations, and so I will just comment on each of those 4 and then ask a few questions and give a little more commentary. On the continue to negotiate at the table with Waste Connections, of course. We always have done that in good faith. We will continue to do that. I don't know that you even need a recommendation from us. That's just what we do, is we work with stakeholders and partners when we're engaged in a proposition that impacts them. That's good public service, and we do that. So, of course, do that, please. And I'll hope that they return the favor and do it in good faith. The audit, very interested in the audit.
And similarly, in exploring what franchising could look like. And I see the recommendation includes bringing someone who is an outside consultant to help guide us through that, partly for capacity reasons, partly to ensure a certain arm's length and nobody's got a particular outcome that they're trying to drive us towards in that process, but just so we can learn more, because from what I understand, there's a lot of promise in that opportunity, both for haulers, to sort of level the playing field around competition, because there is concern, and I've heard it from the smaller, what are still small locally owned haulers, the few that we have remaining, and certainly from consumers. So I'm very curious to learn more about franchising and how it could impact rates. My assumption is positively, and also increase rate transparency, because it would require a public process for us to go through to franchise, which would require much more exposure of where the costs are coming from that the hauler that's responding to a request to bid would have to provide us. So I think competition's a good thing. And as was mentioned, it avoids opportunity for monopolization and price gouging. So I'm all for that. The flow control, I honestly don't have enough of an understanding, but I presume correct me if I'm wrong, please, from the table, but in the course of the exploring franchise opportunities, the flow control kind of goes with that. So I don't know order of operations wise, what we're being asked, what the recommendation to explore flow control really means, and how, if at all, it relates to the conversation around franchising.
Just briefly, you could theoretically do an ordinance related to flow control without franchising, theoretically. And so that's why they are separate, but you are correct, they're most logically connected.
Thank you. So for me, for the 4 recommendations, fully support continuing negotiations, the audit, bringing on a consultant to explore franchising, and how flow control may or may not relate to that is how I would express my position. Diving in a little more, and appreciate all the comments so far. This is about a way of doing business, and one thing that I would note, I'm looking at the FEC filings, the SEC filings, the Securities and Exchange Commission filings from Waste Connections, and their 10K reporting, and how they talk about their business strategy. And before I complete this sentence, I will tell you it starts, our operating strategy seeks to fill in the blank. I'm curious how we would describe our operating strategy and what it seeks to do in regards to waste management from anyone at the table.
So I'll start if Dan wants to add to this. Thank you for that, because Commissioner Lovell also raised the question about kind of private versus public, and are we actually operating an efficient system, and can we lower the rate? We'll go back to this slide here. If you just look at the top line, $51.34 versus $97.63, that's the difference. Our rate is almost half what their rate is. The rest of our rate is for public services that they're not providing, right? So, and that's what's at risk of going away.
So is it fair to say our operating strategy seeks to provide public benefit in regards to waste management?
Efficiently manage the landfill, which you see in the number of years of life that we have, that we continue to efficiently manage it, reduce the environmental impact by making sure that we capture as much methane and reduce that impact as possible. So we're resource managing as opposed to just getting rid of. And then we're providing public benefit that also incentivizes residents to not dump in illegal areas, to not throw their hazardous waste into the wastewater stream, to recycle, right? So I cannot get past this slide and the one before this, where we are and lowering the rate is just gonna sort of allow us to increase the volume there, and we will have to adjust our fees at the transfer stations as well as the operations at transfer stations, but we're clearly doing a more effective job and a more cost-effective from a cost standpoint and operationally.
Yeah, so we sort of take a public utility model to waste management. And now I'm going to read you from the SEC filings from Waste Connections. And I know my colleague down at the end of the row here might think this is bashing a private company, but I'm reading their own words from their report, that their operating strategy seeks to
improve financial returns, and deliver superior shareholder value creation within the solid waste industry. They're trying to profit. That's their goal. Profit for their shareholders, which we saw live in Texas or all over we don't internationally, but they're headquartered in Texas to the tune of almost $10 billion. We generally seek to avoid highly competitive large urban markets and instead target markets where we can attain high market share, either through exclusive contracts, monopolization, vertical integration, we see how well that's working in our healthcare delivery system, or asset positioning. We also target niche markets, blah, 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 blah. But my point is their operating strategy is to maximize profits for their shareholders, which seems like they're doing a really great job. I would also argue that this idea, it's not capitalism versus subsidy. Capitalism depends on public dollars to subsidize. They drive on public roads, their trucks. They require the highway system to truck this garbage 170 miles away from here. You can't decouple this concept of privatizing gains from externalizing the costs. That's a classic thing that is done. So, this is not, I'll leave that there. I have a question about transfer stations. Again, they don't generate profit, as you said, but they are a really important mechanism by which we deliver a good public service. And as Commissioner Buck mentioned, especially in our rural communities, if those transfer stations go away, it might save on our budget line items for operating them, but it will increase costs elsewhere to clean up the ancillary activity that's undoubtedly going to happen.
True.
It will reduce quality of service that the county is able to provide to taxpayers with taxpayer dollars, true. It will likely degrade the environment and have negative environmental consequences if people are dumping in rivers and streams or by roadsides. True. So it's a public health issue, which we also have a responsibility and authority to ensure. So it's sort of one of those penny wise and pound foolish situations that we'll be kind of forced, we are sort of forced into regarding being able to afford the transfer stations. And the reason we can't afford the system is not for lack of us having good managerial skill or providing a needed service. It's because we've set up a structure that has worked for many, many years and is now being starved by the diversion of waste because of a private player who is profiting off of all the public infrastructure that taxpayers are paying for. Is that accurate? Thank you.
Public system that are public values.
I think the final question I have for the moment, just because it was way back at the beginning of things, and it's been brought up a little bit, regarding Springfield customers in particular. County Administrator, you said that they first adopted an ordinance, but it had a may, not a shall, and it said something about the franchise agreement saying the system benefit fee shall be remitted. Can you revisit that? I got a little lost in where are we with the city of Springfield regarding the misalignment of their franchise agreement language with their own ordinance with county code?
Yeah, this is, I don't know, I guess I would chalk it up to a classic sort of technical legal dispute where it's not actually a dispute, it's just that if you look back at the record and you look back at the current language, it's very clear that the intent was always that the system, that waste be brought to Short Mountain by Sanapak or by whoever is the hauler in Springfield. In Springfield, it's just Sanapak. Or if it's going to be hauled out, that the system benefit fee be remitted. It's clear that was the intent. It's clear in the Lane County Code. It's clear in the Springfield City Code. It's clear in the Springfield franchise agreement with Sanapak Waste Connections. It's clear in the record if you look back 27 years. What's also clear is we don't have the legal authority to collect it, right? So to Commissioner Buck's point, should they be remitting that fee? Absolutely. Do we have the ability to hold them accountable for it? No. within the city limits, we don't.
Okay.
And again, it boggles, you go to the last slide, and here again, we go, how is it possible that the rate is higher in Springfield than it is in Eugene when they are paying the system benefit fee in Eugene and they're not in Springfield? And then I'll say to the proposal of our reduction, what's going to happen in Eugene? If we reduce, if Sanapak agrees in Springfield, the rates will be made presumably they'll stay the same. But in Eugene, the rates will likely go down. They would have to, unless they just eat they profit from that because their cost is going to go down from $112 to $100. So it's an obvious win-win for everybody to agree to the reduction in that rate. It will force some reconciliation and some corrections that Lane County will have to do. But again, we're trying to demonstrate that we're listening. We're trying to demonstrate that we hear the concern from the private sector that they want a cost that is more competitive, and they're forcing that to be the case. And so we're willing to say, well, we need to step up to do that in order to maintain this system and avoid a complete collapse.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer to why are Springfield ratepayers paying more is because Waste Connections has a monopoly in Springfield and they can get away with it. They don't have to compete. And that is also clearly another part of what is in their SEC filings. They essentially say that one of their other goals is controlling the waste stream. And we believe that controlling the waste stream by, quote, providing collection services under exclusive arrangements is often more important to our growth and profitability than owning landfills. I think that's all I have for now, Chair. Thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for also your willingness to give Waste Connections another chance to do everything you can to work with them, to put this presentation off at their request. I do appreciate all the work that's going into trying to build that relationship and work with them as a stakeholder in the system. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just a question for council. We have 4 recommendations, no orders, just recommendations from the board. So in form of head nods, is that how you'd like to get those?
Well, I think I've heard from you all except for the chair, and I think I'm getting a feeling like my office needs to do some work on franchising options, flow control options. I will continue to, extend an invitation to have negotiations with Waste Connections. I think I would do that unless you told me don't do that. And then what was the first item? I think
request them come up.
Audit. I will. Yeah, I would want some sort of head nods or direction to do that. In response, in part to Commissioner Buck, the audit would really be confined to whether or not system benefit fees were paid for solid waste collected in unincorporated areas. They've acknowledged there's been some issues there, and they've suggested they're in the process of correcting that. That's great. An audit might disclose what that variance might be. I will tell you, just because of volumes, I don't think you're looking at potentially a large amount of money there, potentially, which again is why we were kind of thinking of moving forward. But that assumes we have a partnership that wants to move forward. So I would kind of want some level of direction as to whether you would want that to occur, and I might very well be back before the board with an order to that effect. But I think I've already kind of heard from enough commissioners to know that I need to have our folks start working on potential franchising options, potential flow control options, and we'll address those. But in terms of the audit, I guess I would kind of want to hear more. I've only heard from one commissioner on that.
And thanks for your response to my question,
Yeah,
Council.
sorry.
So the recommendation from staff, there are 4 of them here, which I believe if we moved them or asked for head nods one at a time on those, it would incorporate franchising, incorporate all of those things. So that's what I would like to do is on these 4 recommendations from staff, I'd like to look for board head nods one at a time.
Okay, when we get to that point, that's a great idea. Okay, if no one else, I'll just finish real quick. We're about 35 minutes over on our presentation. I do have concerns. You know, I had concerns when we initially started raising our rates that garbage might go elsewhere. So now we're here and we're going to have to address that. And my concern is if you lower the price for Sanapak Waste Connections, as Vice Chair brought up, what about our mom and pop shops? What happens with them?
Yeah, oh, lowering the tipping fee. So
I think it would be global.
It would be global.
It would be lowering it across the board.
Yeah, but the only way to do it is, you know, Sanapak Waste Connections is the largest, they own the most, and they're hauling the most. And so we need agreement from Sanapak that they will do that. And then once they agree, which I'm surprised they haven't agreed yet. I would have taken this deal and said yes before we change it. Then we will have that conversation, same conversation or same proposal for all the other haulers.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. And then I only have one question for you, Rob. What's a negative side to franchising? What are we going to hear? We've heard some public comment about it. It actually gives the larger corporations an advantage in our rural areas. How do you see that?
It just depends on how you structure it. Like, for example, in the city of Eugene, they have franchising, but they allow for competition among and between, whereas in city of Springfield, they don't. Those are two different models with two different sets of pros and cons. We're, however, talking about unincorporated areas, which has, and I drew the comparison before, it's always fraught, but with ambulance service areas where your franchising really needs to ensure that who is ever being franchised, whether it be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, however many, is going to serve those hard-to-reach areas and not just cherry-pick the customers that are easier to reach. So when we talk about franchising in unincorporated areas, there are additional elements that you'll want to take into account, such as exactly what you just said. Again, this presentation wasn't about franchising, but I suspect we're going to get head nods, and I'm going to have to do that work, which is fine.
Yeah, I don't know that you'll get a head nod from me for it, but that's why I was asking. So, and then just lastly, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Steve, but you're saying at the Jackson County landfill, they don't offer any recycling hazardous waste, nothing that they could consider some sort of system benefit?
I didn't say that. I don't know what they offer.
Okay.
In the privately owned, you're talking about Dry Creek?
Yeah.
I don't know what they offer. Do you know, Dan?
They have, if they're collecting waste at a transfer station, they have to offer recycling services, but we haven't analyzed who owns the transfer stations or the rates at all those transfer stations.
So they just wrap that
I didn't
up?
offer any statement about what they do or don't do in Jackson County.
Well, no, it was just, if you go back to the prices, you said $97 a ton is just to dump garbage off there.
Well,
Our
it's
system
what we
benefit
know.
fee
It's
pays-
what we've
Our
asked
system
for
benefit
detail.
fee is $57.
Yeah.
So they could have that wrapped into the $97, I guess is what I was getting at.
Oh,
Our system.
well, they're not providing 15 transfer stations and an array of, so if there's any, we'd love to, we've asked for that information. We'd love for any additional information about public services that they're providing in Jackson County. I don't know how any public, if they are providing any of those services in Jackson County, how that's a benefit to Lane County residents, because I don't think our Lane County residents would drive 3 hours south to recycle their materials when they can bring it to our recycling centers.
Right, but I do not understand my question then about the system benefit fee. They could have that wrapped up into their tonnage and everybody's paying it, not just the people that are hauling their garbage from Willamette Valley.
Well, I don't believe they're doing that because they're not providing the same public services that we're providing there. I mean, Are you saying theoretically could they? Sure, they could, but they're not, to my knowledge.
Okay, you want to go through these items one by one? Commissioner Farr, I think that's a great idea.
Okay, sounds good. Then I will go to the items, the staff recommendations. I'll just use the words in the agenda packet. Item 1 that I'll look for board head nods on is to request Sanapak, a subsidiary of Waste Connections Incorporated, to come to the table to negotiate return of waste to Short Mountain landfill. Head nods. Looks like we have 5 on that. Analysis of alternative pricing structures and potential service reductions to balance the Waste Management Division budget. Head nods. Looks like we have 5 on that one. The third is to explore the potential of flow control policies. Looks like we have 5 on that one. No, I'm sorry, we have
You have a majority.
3 on that one. Explore the potential of flow control policies, so only 3 on that one. Okay. Explore franchising of waste haulers in unincorporated Lane County. Looks like we have 3 on that, so 5, 5, 3, and 3.
So I want to be real, I mean, you read it, but I want to be clear. We're exploring the possibility. We're asking for information, and there are 2 commissioners that don't want information before making a decision, is what, just to clarify that.
Okay.
Need anything else on that?
Then
The audit.
Audit.
The audit.
Yeah.
Is that not the analysis of alternative
I
pricing?
think it's different wording for number 2. Initiate an audit of Waste Connections, Inc. records for incorporated areas pursuant to Lane Code 9.020.
Did you incorporate that in bullet point 2?
I thought so, yeah. That's
Is
how I
that-
took it.
Oh, it's
Fully
in
incorporated, yeah.
two? Okay.
That's how I understood that.
Okay.
And that was a 5-head nod, Rob.
Okay.
So we're not, okay.
Any more work you want me to do?
Glad you're feeling better.
Everybody.
You weren't doing anything anyway, were you?
Glad you're feeling better.
Thank you,
Okay,
Commissioners.
I think that's good. All right, wrapped up. Next, County Administration. Elections update.
I can do a quick elections update. I don't see Eve Gray here. We can follow up with the board on the public comment that was offered. I did, and I know Eve was here listening to that, and she has some information to share. Do a quick elections update. Preparations for the May 19th, 2026 primary election are well underway. Ballot layout and styles are finalized. There are 448 different styles reflecting all district combinations across Lane County's precincts. In accordance with state law and Lane County charter, the sheriff contest will appear with 1 candidate, and the assessor contest will advance to the general election without appearing on the May ballot. A full list of ballot contests and candidates, as well as full text of ballot titles, are available at the clerk's website. This election is a closed primary, so the county will be producing 3 ballot styles: Democratic, Republican, and nonpartisan. Voters must be affiliated with either the Democratic or Republican Party to receive a party ballot. Otherwise, they will receive a nonpartisan ballot. Lane County is not producing a county voter pamphlet, but information on 2 local county-wide measures will be in the state voter pamphlet, including explanatory statements and arguments. Just over 283,000 voters are actively registered and set to receive ballots. Military and overseas ballots are scheduled to be mailed to over 2,021 to be exact. Ballots will be mailed to military and overseas absentee voters on April 3rd. Military and overseas voters and domestic voters by request will also receive emails to use the county's electronic ballot delivery system to access, print, and return ballot materials if they're unable to receive their ballots timely by mail. Upcoming dates. The registration deadline for the first-time registrants to vote or to change party affiliation is April 28th, so you have a few weeks, but April 28th is the deadline to register for first-time voters or to change party affiliation. On April 30th, ballots will be dropped in the mail. All 21 Lane County drop boxes will be opened, and the election's live stream will go live. Ballots should be hitting mailboxes between May 1st and May 7th. Please visit the elections website for results, posting schedule, ballot return dashboards, special district candidate filings, measure filings, videos of the ballot processing at lanecountyor.gov/elections. lanecountyor.gov/elections. That's it.
Okay, so that takes care of elections updates and announcements. On to commissioner business. Any announcements?
Just had a question, if
Yes.
you were going to hear back from Eve's comments.
Yeah,
You said Eve had some comments.
Yes, but she's not here, so I can follow up with commissioners on that. And she was going to talk to Pauline Gishohi, who is our behavioral health officer. And she'll have some points that I can send the board via an email.
Thank you. And on that point, just because during that I was messaging, we did receive, Lane County Evan, who just left the room, put out on March 9th, so you might have it back in your emails, a notice about this change in youth mobile crisis services and stabilization services, and that we were actually working really closely with Riverview on the transition of care. So that has been underway for a while.
Okay.
I had a real announcement if we're there.
Go ahead.
I wanted to share that yesterday I was out with our parks folks for ribbon cutting for Eagle Rock Park. This was funded through FEMA dollars and our parks levy. This was a park right at Eagle Rock on McKenzie that was completely burnt down in a Holiday Farm fire. And now there is a wonderful new place for people to go visit. It's a halfway mark, traditional halfway mark for the McKenzie Guides when they're taking tours down the river, where they would stop and have lunch and hang out before they finished the rest of their river run. And now they get to utilize it again, and it was lovely. In addition to that, right after that, yesterday, the Across the Bridge Monument had a viewing out in West Eugene. This is a monument that I believe we all contributed to here at the board that will be eventually placed at Alton Baker Park. It was lovely. Lots of people were there. I think they're thinking a September unveiling or so. So you can read about it online, but also wanted to give a heads up. The unveiling will be quite important to attend.
That's the halfway point. Where do they start and stop?
This is roughly in Vida, so you'll go pretty far upriver and come in and go down the rest of the way. It's close to Vida.
Thank you.
Commissioner Trigger.
Yeah, I also attended the Black Cultural Initiative's sculpture viewing. This is the life-size model of it's getting ready to be cast in bronze. It was really, they've had a small model available for viewing, but it's a wonderful event out at the artist's studio, and lots of folks from the community there, and a lot of excitement about that. I also was glad Anna came to give testimony this morning. I was also going to mention Trans Day of Visibility. And I guess I should just follow up directly with the sheriff, really, on some of the specific requests that she made that we look into about county policy and processes around jail housing and for employees who are transitioning on the job in the APM. Is that something I need to ask you to follow up on, or should I follow up with the sheriff directly?
Commissioner, you certainly can do that related to the sheriff's operations. In terms of the broader comment about transition policies, and it is correct, and we are actively working on developing and applying a countywide transition policy. It's different in different departments, which is why they exist differently that way. So yes, and I'd say feel free to talk to the sheriff about the sheriff's operations, and we are working on a countywide policy.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And I will just close by noting today concludes Women's History Month. There have been a lot of really wonderful, notable events and so on in the community, and so I just particularly want to acknowledge my colleague, Commissioner Buck. She and I are the 6th and 7th women ever to serve on this elected body in the history of Lane County. And then, of course, we have some really incredible women leaders in this organization, including our elected assessor, Mary Vuksich-Schaefer. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Sure, Fall.
If you'd like to wrap committee reports then?
Well, I have
about 30 minutes.
I have one more announcement, and it is about the United Front trip. I am unable to go. I have a Agape family benefit that week that I cannot get out of. So who typically, it is the outgoing chair. I don't know if Commissioner Lovell wants to go or not.
Gotta put me on the spot there, Chair. I want some time to think about that a little bit.
Well, I received a text message about 30 seconds ago saying it'd be great if we had to answer today. So we can do the best we can. I can't go.
Yeah, it
So-
was my understanding, Commissioner Lovell wanted to go, and then it only came up when you were concerned about missing a meeting, and when it was pointed out it was a down week, you wanted to consider it, so.
Yeah, and now,
Yeah.
future looking at my calendar, I
Right.
cannot go, so.
It was my understanding Commissioner Lovell had expressed interest in going.
Oh, that's new.
Well, the schedule's filling up. I would like to talk about it with Mr. Steve Adams before I make a final decision, so I'll commit to that, to talk to him about it.
Okay.
Some things have come up for me as well that week, so.
Mr. Farr.
Well, I'm not going to drop an opportunity to talk about my wife, who is serving in her 16th year on the Bethel School Board. And prior to that was elected as the state representative from House District 14. So women in government, I appreciate it strongly, and I get a great deal of insight from my contacts there. On committee reports, we all have lots of committees, and I'm not going to give you reports on these, but I have agendas that, since we had our last meeting, we had a Homes for Good Board meeting, OHA, Oregon Health Authority Local Government Advisory Committee meeting, Poverty and Homelessness Board, Community Health Council meetings, also a Substance Use Disorder Group meeting. If you want agendas for those, I can pass them along. And that's all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Okay, future board assignment requests. Commissioner Farr, or Commissioner Lovell, excuse me.
One of those guys on the end. Thank you, Chair. We have received some letters and some emails about the 25th February ruling of the utilities and the change in the hydroelectric dam output. I've gotten some correspondence with Springfield Utility Board, EPUD, and a few other Lane County power companies who would ask us to join them in a letter of opposition and cooperation with those 38 consumer-operated utilities in opposing the February 25th change in outputs of hydroelectric dams along the Columbia and the Snake Rivers, and I'm looking for head nods on that. I do have a number of points that I think the board's probably already aware of that I was going to mention, but if you're already aware of it, then no need to mention that. I think it's a good, important thing for us to do. It's going to increase utility rates to our citizens $5 to $10 a month minimum, and it's a clean, reliable, economically, environmentally friendly way we get our power. It's about 60% of our power grid, and with the increase of our power grid climbing, we're going to need that energy, and the utilities that are signed on are thinking it's an unnecessary step, and I think we should join them in that.
And that was every utility in Lane County had signed on to that.
Every
right?
utility in Lane County has signed on, yes.
Yeah, I support that.
Guess I don't have enough information. I know individually as commissioners, we'll sometimes sign on, and otherwise we usually want, much like we did with the cooperator letter agreement with the forest plan, and I would rather have a little more of a presentation about what the implications are of that and what the implications are to county operations of the ruling. I'm not up to speed on it, I'm afraid.
I have to say I'm in the same, so I'm not, I'd really like to be able to have Steve Adams come and present on that, what the impact is for the county before I would give the go-ahead.
I'm okay with it. Yes.
I'm a yes.
Okay. And then I have one board assignment. April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And Miss Patty Perlow reached out to see if I would do a statement letter in April, and would like head nods for Patty and maybe Devin Ashbridge to work for a quick statement to read. Okay. All right.
So 2 letters, Chair, a letter of opposition regarding the hydroelectric legislation, and then a child abuse prevention letter, both on behalf of the board.
Thank you.
Chair, before you adjourn.
Yes.
Sorry, thank you. I just have one clarity too. I was going to have us look into the MOU at Riverview, but apparently Commissioner Trieger has said that we're on that and we'll get information back from Director Gray.
I'm happy to send an email to commissioners with the.
Yeah, I promised to follow up on that with the team that came forward that we met, that I'd follow up on that. So I'd like some more information, please. Thank you.
Okay. With that, our next scheduled Board of Commissioners meeting is Tuesday, April 7th, and we are done. Thank you.